Ministry of Education in liaison with the Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development to mainstream climate change education throughout formal education systems through integrating climate education in the school curriculum to creatively prepare children and young people for a rapidly changing, uncertain, risky, and possibly dangerous future, and train and equip teachers and school administrators with the necessary information and skills to teach and explore new approaches to learning that can contribute to the transformation of unsustainable climate systems, values, and routines. Senator Danson Mungatana will also move a motion in the Senate. This is according to the order of business. The Senator will move a motion on the effects of upstream activities on the River Tana to the residents of the Tana Delta. That the Senate urges the Ministry of Water, Sanitation and Irrigation, in conjunction with the Water Resources Authority, to conduct stakeholder participation before undertaking any major upstream activity, including construction of dams before the release of water during rainy seasons and limiting flow of water to River Tana during the dry seasons, and also develop a policy in line with the Nile Treaty of 1959 to guarantee average annual flow of the Tana River, and come up with mitigation measures to the perennial floods and water scarcity to the residents of Tana Delta. The Senate Majority Leader will move a motion on the adjournment of the Senate that pursuant to Standing Order 3, subsection 3, Standing Orders 31, subsection 3, the Senate do adjourn until Tuesday, 8th of November, 2022. That is the order of business this afternoon, plus, of course, a number of papers which will be laid on the table of the Senate by the Senate Majority Leader. Among those papers is the report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of Turkana County Youth and Women Empowerment Fund for the year ended 30th June 2021. Another paper which will be laid on the table of the Senate this afternoon is the report by the Auditor General on the financial statement to Kiambu County Education Bursary Fund for the year ended 30th June 2021. If you're just joining us, the Senate business is about to begin, and I will now hand you over for this live broadcast, which has been brought to you by the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation and PBU.
Tuombe. Mwenyezi Mungu, twakusihi ututazame kwa neema nyingi na baraka sisi watumishi wako ambao umeridhika kutuita kwa nyadhifa za uongozi katika jamhuri yetu. Twakuomba utujalie tuyatende na kufikiria mambo yote yatakofikishwa mbele yetu kwa njia ya haki na uaminifu, ili kustawisha amani, ufanisi na heri ya nchi hii yetu na wale ambao ajaza umezikabidhi mikononi mwetu. Amina. Honorable Senators, I can confirm that we have quorum. So let's transact some business. Clerk.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair.
Next order.
Order number 3, messages.
Next order.
Order number 4, petitions.
Next order.
Order number 5, papers.
Majority leader. Okay. Majority whip.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of this Senate. Today, the 27th of October, the year of our Lord 2022. These are reports of the Auditor General for the year ended 30th June 2021 on the financial statements of the following counties and institutions. 1. Lamu County Executive Staff Housing Fund, Lamu County Youth Development Fund, Lamu County Gender and Social Development Fund, Lamu Municipality Board, Lamu County Disability Development Fund, Meru County Assembly Members Car Loan and Housing Fund, Meru County Revenue Board, Meru County Microfinance Corporation, Meru County Investment and Development Corporation, Meru Water and Sewerage Services Registered Trustees, Imeda Water and Sanitation Company Limited, and Washinigishu County Assembly. Furthermore, Mr. Speaker, I lay Washinigishu County Cooperative Enterprise Development Fund, Washinigishu County Staff Mortgage and Car Loan Scheme Fund, Washinigishu County Inua Biashara Fund, Washinigishu County Education Revolving Fund, Washinigishu Bursary and Skills Development Support Fund, Washinigishu County Emergency Fund, Eldoret Water and Sanitation Company Limited, Municipality of Eldoret Fund, Turkana County Executive State and Public Officers Car and Mortgage Fund, Turkana County Assembly Car and Mortgage Fund for members, Turkana County Assembly Car and Mortgage Fund for the staff, Turkana County COVID-19 Emergency Response Fund, Turkana County Cooperative Enterprise Development, Turkana County Biashara Fund, Turkana County Education and Skills Development Fund, Turkana County Youth and Women Development Fund, Turkana County Emergency Fund, Kiambu Executive Staff Mortgage Scheme Fund, Kiambu Executive Emergency Fund, Kiambu County Assembly Car Loan and Mortgage Fund, Kiambu County Alcoholic Drinks Control Fund, Kiambu County Education Bursary Fund for the year ended 30th of June 2021, and a report of the Auditor General on the financial statement of the Kiambu County Jijenge Fund. And finally, Mr. Speaker, I lay the following: Kitunguri Water and Sanitation Company Limited, Karuri Water and Sanitation Company Limited, Thika Water Sewerage Company Limited, Limuru Water and Sewerage Company Limited, and Gatundu Water and Sanitation Company Limited. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I lay the papers.
Very well. Dr. Mboni.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker.
Oh, you have more papers?
Oh, sorry.
Huh? Oh, okay. Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion. Order number 7, statements.
We have several statements and standing under 53.1. According to your order paper, the first statement was to be made by the Senator from Marsabit County, Senator Mohamed Chute. He has requested that statement to be deferred to a later date. So let us have a senator for Mombasa County. Senator Mwinyi Haji Faki Mohammed is not allowed. Senator for Kilifi County, Senator Mazayo, not present. Senator for Kisumu County, Senator Professor Tom Ojenda, not present. Senator Beatrice Oyomo.
Honorable Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Lands, Environment and Natural Resources regarding the lack of title deeds in various adjudication sections in Mutembei County. Honorable Speaker, this is due to non-completion of adjudication by the Ministry of Lands, Housing and Urban Development, and the National Lands Commission. Honorable Speaker, the National Land Commission, when it came to be, one of its mandates was to ensure that the adjudication process in this country was completed in 10 years. Honorable Speaker, in the following adjudication sections in Mutembei County, a number have not even been declared, but a number also are incomplete. Honorable Speaker, this has denied the people of the following areas security of tenure, and in the statement, the committee should, 1, state when the adjudication will be concluded in order to pave way for titling at the Kubia East in Gwasi, that is in Suba South constituency, Kaksingri West B, that is still in Suba South constituency, as well as Waware and Wakula adjudication sections in Mfangano Island. Honorable Speaker, in the statement too, the committee should also explain the reasons for the non-completion of the adjudication section called Manywanda. And Honorable Speaker, I would like this to be corrected. Manywanda adjudication section is in Rangwe constituency and not in Dewa, but still in Mutembei County, and stating when likely the process will be complete. Honorable Speaker, in the statement, the committee should also outline the measures put in place, if any, by the National Land Commission to eradicate the overlapping adjudication and land registration numbers in Beta Point. Honorable Speaker, in Beta Town, other than Isipe, the rest of the town has overlapping LR numbers, and thus the town, in that town there's no title deed. And Honorable Speaker, in the statement, the committee should undertake a visit to the above adjudication sections to ascertain the serious challenges the locals undergo in their land ownership process with a view to aiding in streamlining of the same. Thank you, Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Beatrice. The statement stands committed to the Minister of Lands, Housing and Urban Development, and also to the National Land Commission. Yes, Senator Chalge.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I know we had say at least we avoid riding, but allow me just to make a comment on this issue because I have similar problems, especially to constituencies that border forests along the cut line in Nandi. There are a number of forest evictees that do not have title deeds, and it is worth noting that the new CS of lands has been formally sworn in. I agree that it continues to be a challenge, Mr. Speaker, because these title deeds are important for our people. They can even use for collateral security when they want to take loans. They can even use to partner and use in their cooperative societies in one way or another. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to congratulate Senator Beatrice for bringing this to the fore. And I hope when I haven't seen the chair of lands, but I believe there are a number of members of lands that will take up this matter. And it continues to be a serious issue, Mr. Speaker. Even when the Ministry of Lands wanted to do digital mapping, we are yet to understand the use of GPS and how that mapping has been done. So it is very important, even as we push for adjudication and titling, we must, the Ministry of Lands must tell us what they have been doing with this GPS mapping that they are doing across the country so that we can pull out. And Mr. Speaker, this land grabiosis is so common across the nation. So I think it is important that to avoid land grabbing, let the rightful owners be given possession and ownership of those lands. I thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity.
Honorable Senators, Honorable Chalge, you have actually pointed out that we are trying to avoid so many comments during statements. Because members, if you can be able to attend even the session when the ministry officials will be invited to this committee, you can execute all the issues that we raise after when the statement is read. So to save on time, let me balance this equation, one member from this side. There is Senator Wambua.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I respect your ruling on members riding on statements, but I also respect the fact that you also recognize that at times members may not have a chance to attend the committee proceedings, and when they ride on these statements, they are also able to give direction to the committee to widen the scope of the statement. Mr. Speaker, I would just point out two issues. First is to thank Senator Beatrice for coming up with this statement. This statement is applicable in almost every county in this country. So, as many members are in this house, Mr. Speaker, I'm very sure each one of them has something to say about land adjudication and titling in their counties. For me, I have two issues, Mr. Speaker. The delay in land adjudication and titling in Kitui County has resulted in a situation where delays have been experienced for years, where government has taken private property for public utility, but because the people whose land has been taken have no title deeds, they are unable to access compensation for their land. So, the Speaker, you see that is suffering double jeopardy, because on the one hand, you've been deprived of your land, and on the other hand, you are unable to access compensation for the land. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, and lastly, this land adjudication, and I was with the chairman of Security Committee yesterday in Mother Ward, and this matter came up, where people of Mother Ward want to know exactly where the cut line between a game reserve is and where private land begins. If we can fast track this process of adjudication, Mr. Speaker, then that clarity will be available, and a lot of these conflicts that we are experiencing would be minimized. Mr. Speaker, I thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next statement from, no, the others, okay. What is your point of order, Chairman?
Mr. Speaker, really, it's not even a point of order. I just want to seek your directions in this matter because, Mr. Speaker, you gave some indication that you want to really discourage members commenting on statements because then it takes a lot of time and the members should be encouraged to appear in those committees. Mr. Speaker, I think it is important for you to Mr. Speaker, I think there are two issues here. There are statements and there are petitions. Mr. Speaker, my experience in the National Assembly, and I'm not saying we need to follow what happens there, is that the comments on petitions are encouraged. But on statements, Mr. Speaker, they are not. And I think because members want to know the clear position, so that I think it's important for you to give directions. Do we comment on statements? If it is so, Mr. Speaker, you could give a short time. If the policy should be no, we should have that position. But for petitions, Mr. Speaker, because of the nature of the issues, I feel you need to give directions on that issue. And I'm not saying, Mr. Speaker, that we adopt what happens elsewhere. I just want, as a member of this House, to say that your direction is very clear so that...
Before you sit down, okay. Senator Cheptumo, there is an only member who wants to inform you on maybe the only rules that they have been using in this House.
Senator Mike, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I know that Senator Cheptumo has just arrived fresh from National Assembly. Where it's like a double intake with 349 members. Here we are only 67. And I think in appreciation of that fact, Senator Cheptumo, if you read article, our standing order 53, subsection 3A, it actually states that the Speaker may allow comments in relation to the statement. The only rider is that should not be for more than 15 minutes. So it is captured. It is in our standing orders. And Mr. Speaker, sir, this has been our tradition in this House, in the Senate, that when a statement is raised by a member, we are allowed to make comments provided we don't exceed 15 minutes. So I know there is the tradition for National Assembly, but there's also the tradition, custom, and usage of the Senate. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The standing order says the Speaker may. So I can give or not give that time. Yeah. Yes, Senator Boni.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, with benefit of hindsight, in the National Assembly, before Parliament became bicameral, what is today statements in the Senate was question time in the National Assembly. And Mr. Speaker, why we developed a culture of members riding on statements, it is because the answer that will be brought will not be brought by the minister. It will be brought by the chairman of the committee. So senators, in anticipation of possible supplementary questions, would then ride on the question, so that the committee, when now it presents what transpired here, it includes the questions that rode over that statement, so that then the answer is comprehensive. I've been sitting here for the last few weeks when I rejoined this House, and it looks like what concerns the chair is actually time. Why are you worried that you will not finish the question on the order paper? Mr. Speaker, sir.
Who are you asking?
I'm asking this House.
The chair.
I'm asking the House. If the statements on the order paper for today, for argument's sake, are 5, and then at the end of the required time, which is around 1 hour, comes to pass, and you are on statement number 3, you just carry it to the next day. That is the practice. We want to do quality work here. We don't want people to think that we are joyriders. In fact, Mr. Speaker, sir, we are very serious. So serious that during the campaigns we were making commitments on power, on land title deeds, and all that. Let us ventilate and rule this country.
Senator Mbori Karwale, I made some ruling or communication on this matter. I said I may give time or not give. Actually, I was very keen to see who is actually happy that you are making that statement. Samson, Senator Chalgei, Senator Enoch. Are you clapping against my ruling or? Okay. So let us have the next statement from Senator Minority Rinda.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53, Sub-Rule 1, to seek a statement from the Standing Committee of National Security, Defense and Foreign Relations on the severe drought and famine situation in Kilifi County. Mr. Speaker, in the statement, the committee should address itself to, number 1, state the measures, if any, that the National Drought Management Authority has put in place in response to drought situation in Kilifi County, especially in the worst hit some counties of Magarini, Ganze, and Kaloleni, which are in dire need of food aid. Number 2, the committee to provide details of the relief food distribution program in place by the national government across the country, including Kilifi County, detailing the areas covered, the number and particulars of beneficiaries, including their sub-counties, the type of food aid in distribution, ascertain equity of food distribution across drought-stricken counties across the whole country. Number 3, ascertain whether illegal logging in Kilifi County is partly responsible for the drought situation of the county, and stating measures, if any, put in place to sensitize the residents against environmental degradation as a long-term measure in mitigating future drought disasters. Lastly, Mr. Speaker, the committee should establish whether sustainable measures, if any, the authority and stakeholders seek to institute to address the issues of drought and famine in Kenya's arid and semi-arid lands. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Mazayo. Your statement stands committed to the Standing Committee on National Security, Defense and Foreign Relations. Honorable Senators, we have a visiting group, teachers and pupils from Ndonyokie Primary School in Kajiado County. Honorable Senators, in the public gallery, we have 102 pupils accompanied by 5 teachers and 2 parents from Ndonyokie Primary School in Kajiado County, who are in the Senate on education tour. Honorable Senators, in our usual tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to them, and on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, wish them a fruitful visit. I thank you. Senator Kajiado County.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Let me take this opportunity to welcome the students from Oldonyonyokie Primary School and teachers for creating time to be with us today and come for a tour to the Senate. Probably I would really want to introduce myself to them because they are young pupils. My name is Lenku Kanar Seki, your senator for Kajiado, and want to appraise you by saying welcome. I know very well that soon you will have, in the new years to come, you will have many of you coming here as senators, as members of parliament, your teachers also. Will also have to learn something, and probably as you go back home, you will have something to have learned. So I think I want to say thank you, karibuni, and may God bless you as you go back to Kajiado. Oldonyonyokie is a very remote area where it's within the Kajiado West sub-county, and I know very well that at this time, you've just sacrificed yourself to be here because we have a very extensive and very worst situation of drought, but I really want to echo you and be with you. Probably we'll be with you down there as you go back so that I can say hi and discuss more about your trip as you go back home. Thank you and welcome.
Okay. The senators with this request, you want to welcome the students from Onyokie? Okay. Oh, yes, Senator Tobiko.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you really for the opportunity. And let me take this opportunity to welcome the students and the teachers and the parents from Oldonyonyokie Primary School. Mr. Speaker, I was happy to see some little Maasai girls up there coming to see what happens at the national level, what happens at the Senate. And I just want to encourage them that when you go back home, study hard. When you go back home, let nobody put limits for you. There are no limits in this world. Even the sky is not the limit. Just yesterday, we had a beautiful Maasai girl who walked out of this chamber, Soipan Tuya, to become the cabinet secretary of this country. And I think that should encourage you. And I'm seated here at the Senate, having served in 2 parliamentary terms at the National Assembly, and having been elected as the first Maasai woman to ever be elected. And so I know those of you seated there can make it to this house, can make it to be pilots, can make it to be legislators, can make it to be doctors. And so I want to encourage you. I know you're coming from a very remote area. And Mr. Speaker, my statement in a short while, if you will allow me, is about the drought that is affecting Kajiado County now. Let me say welcome again and feel really encouraged that you can also reach this level. Thank you very much.
Senator Sige Kegei, Christo.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to also join my colleagues in the Senate to welcome the young people and their guardians for coming to visit us at the Senate. And I haven't said hello to the young people that have been coming but today I felt it necessary to share something with these young people that are here with us this afternoon. I wanted to encourage them that apart from working hard in school and doing the best that you can, dreaming big, aiming higher, reaching farther, I also wanted to encourage them that, like me, a disabled woman who is also a youth in this Senate, that sometimes in life you'll face challenges, but I believe, and I want to encourage them, that challenges are not for you to show weakness, but for you to discover your strengths. Mr. Speaker, I want to remind the young people who are here with us today that even if your plans change, or rather God has a different plan for you, whatever that might look like, whatever that might manifest into, I'd like to remind them that sometimes God gives you a mountain so that you can show others that it can be moved. And for them to be here today is an absolute privilege, just like I find it a privilege to be here amongst brilliant, some of the most brilliant minds and people in the entire country. And for me to come from all the way from Bombolulu, Mombasa, and standing here in the Senate, I just want them to know that if they're looking for any inspiration or encouragement or a story to follow in future, when they find challenges, to please look my way. Na tuko pamoja. Thank you and welcome.
What is your point of order?
Thank you for allowing me. Thank you for allowing me. I want to start by confessing on my point of order that my wife is a Maasai. And it is wrong. I haven't stopped counting, so. And it is wrong, Mr. Speaker, sir, for these Kenyan children of Maasai origin to leave this house thinking that they come from a remote area. The word remote area is a colonial relic, where the whites thought people living far away from Nairobi and cities and they were finding difficult to reach were living in remote areas. We would like our children to know that they don't come from a remote area, they come from an area which is far away from Nairobi. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. There is a lot of interest on these drought issues, and there is a similar statement by Senator Perez Tobiko on drought. So execute also your statement, then we can get comments together with the statement from Senator Mazayo. Senator Tobiko, read out your statement.
Yes, I have. Thank you, Speaker. Speaker, I arise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on National Security, Defense and Foreign Relations regarding the drought situation that has adversely affected the people, livestock and wildlife in Kajiado County. In the statement, the committee should address state strategies that the national government will put in place to scale up the response to drought beyond December 2022 in light of the anticipated below average performance of short rainfall. Mr. Speaker, can you protect me from a number of senators making a lot of noise here?
Nobody is making noise, Senator Tobiko.
They are distracting my attention to this.
You are okay, proceed.
All right, thank you, Speaker. So, Speaker, I was saying the committee should state strategies that the national government will put in place to scale up the response to drought beyond December 2022 in light of the anticipated below average performance of short rainfall so as to save the lives of the people and livestock in Kajiado and other affected counties. B, to provide evidence of plans by the national government and county government of Kajiado to release the available funding to enable most vulnerable households to meet minimum household needs, and to create social accountability mechanisms for planning, monitoring, and implementation of the targeted actions. C, to address the needs of women and young girls who are disproportionately affected by the adverse effects of the drought, including the resultant risk of sexual and gender-based violence and early marriages. And lastly, outline the adaptation measures put in place by both levels of government, if any, that promote drought preparedness, alternative climate resilient livelihood options, and target economic empowerment programs for youth and women. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. The statement stands committed to the Standing Committee on National Security, Defense, and Foreign Relations. Let's take a few comments, starting with Senator Manzo Daniel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it's clear to the world that there is drought in Kenya and the rains are late. Ordinarily, but this month, most parts of the country have had rains, and many parts, Mr. Speaker, including Makwiny County, are really dry, and there is famine. And although today, Mr. Speaker, the national government has given some food in a place called Kadonzweni, which is Makwiny constituency sub-county. There are 6 other constituencies in Makwiny County, and the same has not been extended to the rest of the sub-counties. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, the government has really stepped up, not only in Makwiny, but in many other parts of the country, Mr. Speaker, where we have drought situation and where people are suffering. But more important, Mr. Speaker, we must really protect our environment. Trees have been cut all over. There are forest fires in many, many parts of the country. Very little is being done to stop these fires. This is raising the world temperature, and eventually the rains fail due to also depletion of ozone layer. As a country, one of the solutions is to plant trees. We need to come up with a policy for every county to have part of its budget to plant trees, and also every county to rearrange its budget to buy food, especially where the counties are facing serious famine, to buy food for the people, and also what to do then with the animals which are starving. The government has to do something so that grass is provided to those animals and water, and that's why you are finding conflicts like the one in Kitui County. The Somali herders, their camels, and all these need solutions, Mr. Speaker, so that we can contain the situation, and then also the counties, again, to prepare for seedlings, for seeds. When the short rains come, they will be so brief, so that there is a lot of information to Kenyans in these areas about the rain situation, so that we can be able to plant where we can plant, and where the grass will grow in the drier areas. A better mechanism of, even in future, Mr. Speaker, let me finish on this one, having irrigation in the country other than rain-fed agriculture, doing dams in these counties so that we can have enough water for animals and people. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Loba Hali. You have 2 minutes at least for any comment on statements. 2 minutes are enough.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, sir. I rise to support this discussion on drought. As you are aware, we had requested for motion for adjournment of the House before to discuss, but unfortunately we did not get enough time to reflect on it. The situation is extremely dire, and it is unprecedented. It has not been seen before in the recent years, probably 20 to 25 years in our region. And the pastoralists have already lost more than half their livestock in most of the ASAL counties. And the way the situation is ongoing, previously, Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to put something for the understanding maybe of my colleagues. During such drought and drought declaration, non-state actors or donor communities used to swing into action to complement the efforts of the government. Unfortunately, because Kenya has been declared a middle-income country, this response is not forthcoming. It is believed a middle-income country should be able to respond to the drought effectively by themselves. And even though President Uhuru declared drought emergency, maybe renewed declaration will be required to synergize the effort of many respondents from different sectors. I would like to urge using Senate resolution, if possible, if the county governments can really defer implementation of certain projects for purposes of making sure we save lives and try and respond to the humanitarian crisis that is taking shape. The worry now has moved beyond livestock into imminent and clear and present danger that is facing facing the pastoral communities by way of really loss of lives as a result of starvation. And this is something that it will be extremely embarrassing for a country of our status to be able to report loss of lives as a result of drought. I would like to, some relief food is being given, but it's not based on a standard UN food.
Are these requests still on the same statement? Next statement is from Senator Mohamed Faki.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, sir, I stand pursuant to Standing Order number 53-1 of the Senate Standing Orders to seek a statement from the Sessional Committee on Delegated Legislation on the review of remuneration and benefits of state officers, both in the executive of the national government, the Senate, and the National Assembly, under the third remuneration benefits review cycle for the financial years 2021-2022 to 2022-24 and 25, as contained in Gazette Notice number 8792 and 8793, issued on the 22nd of July 2022. In the statement, Mr. Speaker, sir, the committee should clarify whether the Gazette Notice comply with Section 11 of the Statutory Instruments Act of 2013, and 2, ascertain whether appropriate consultations with the relevant stakeholders was undertaken, noting that the transparency and fairness principle stated in the Constitution under Article number 235D is applicable to these instances. Mr. Speaker, sir, under the Statutory Instrument Act, a statutory instrument means any rule, order, regulation, direction, form, tariff of costs or fees, letters, patent, commission, warrant, proclamation, bylaw, resolution, guidance, guideline, or other statutory instrument issued, made, or established in the execution of a power conferred by or under an act of parliament, and under which the statutory instrument or subsidiary legislation is expressly authorized to be issued. Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to move.
Still have some requests here. I don't know who want to contribute on this statement. Let me check. Senator Mogeni, Eric.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, thank you. Mr. Speaker, I also. Mr. Speaker, sir, I also want to write on the statement that has been sought by Senator Faki. Number one, Mr. Speaker, I would like the committee to explain to the House, Mr. Speaker, why the SRC in the said Gazette Notice has not reviewed upwards remuneration of various cadre of lowly paid state officers, including ECD teachers, nurses, drivers, and other cadre of members of staff, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, number 2, on Gazette Notice 5686, Mr. Speaker, I want the committee to make an inquiry whether there has been a conflict of interest from the chair of the Salaries and Remuneration Commission and explain to the House, Mr. Speaker, why the chair of SRC has set for herself a car loan of 10 million shillings, Mr. Speaker, which is far up on other key government officers, Mr. Speaker. I'm surprised, Mr. Speaker, that the SRC chair is paying herself a car loan of 10 million compared with the chair of EACC, who she has set a car loan at 8 million, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this House will be surprised that in the said Gazette Notice 5686, the car loan for the Director of National Intelligence is set as 6 million, while the car loan for the SRC chair is set as 10 million shillings, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, whereas there has not been any review upwards for the salaries of the low paid cadre members of staff I've mentioned, including ECD teachers, nurses, and drivers, Mr. Speaker, the SRC chair has reviewed our salary upwards, Mr. Speaker, with a total of Kenya shillings 156,075 shillings, Mr. Speaker. I want, Mr. Speaker, the members of this House to inquire, Mr. Speaker, whether there has been a conflict of interest, whereby, Mr. Speaker, the SRC chair has set for herself a mortgage of 40 million shillings, Mr. Speaker. Whereas, Mr. Speaker, the mortgage of IG, the Inspector General of Police, has been set at 25 million shillings, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you will be surprised, Mr. Speaker, that the mortgage for the Chief Executive Officer of Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission in the Z Gazette Notice has been set at 30 million, Mr. Speaker. Even for members of Parliament, Mr. Speaker, our mortgage has been set at 35 million, Mr. Speaker. The question I want to pose, who reviewed and set terms for the chair of SRC, Mr. Speaker? Because we were here, Mr. Speaker, when we converted the position of SRC chair from part-time to full-time. So when, Mr. Speaker, did she sit to review our own remuneration and benefits, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, I also want to know, Mr. Speaker, why the commuter allowance for the senators has been reduced, Mr. Speaker, from 284,000 downwards to 150,000, Mr. Speaker. Whereas in the said Gazette Notice, Mr. Speaker, the SRC chair has set for herself an annual leave allowance of 50,000 shillings, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the said Gazette Notice, Mr. Speaker, we have been put in category F1. That's where you find members of Parliament, judges of the Court of Appeal, and permanent secretaries, Mr. Speaker. But you'll notice, Mr. Speaker, contrary to Article 27 of the Constitution, Mr. Speaker, the salaries of the judges of Court of Appeal progress annually from 710,000, Mr. Speaker, to a maximum of 1.1 million shillings. Whereas, Mr. Speaker, the salary of members of Parliament stagnate at 710,000 shillings, Mr. Speaker. I want the committee to give a statement as to whether that amounts to discrimination in line with Article 27 of the Constitution. Finally, Mr. Speaker, I want the SRC to provide a Gazette Notice, Mr. Speaker, where they have set the car grant for cabinet secretaries who currently enjoy a car grant of 12 million shillings for every 4 years, Mr. Speaker, meaning, Mr. Speaker, the CSs who have been sworn into office today, Mr. Speaker, will receive a car grant of 12 million shillings, Mr. Speaker, on top of an official government vehicle. And this will be repeated after 4 years. The same applies, Mr. Speaker, to the judges of appeal, Mr. Speaker. I also want to know, Mr. Speaker, finally, Mr. Speaker, why in Gazette Notice, they say in Gazette Notice at page 5683, Mr. Speaker, why the Salaries and Remuneration Commission has set house allowance, Mr. Speaker, for governors at shillings 200,000, and on top of them being provided with official residence, on top of a mortgage, Mr. Speaker, of 30 million shillings. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Mungatana Danson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, further to the requests, we would like the Committee on Delegated the legislation to also clarify whether they define government as a going concern or not. How it is that you can actually sit down and pass legislation, Mr. Speaker, to the disadvantage of a sitting person who is occupying that office. Mr. Speaker, they should clarify further, Mr. Speaker. Is it fair to disable state officers who are carrying out important function by removing allowances that are supposed to be functional for those state officers, Mr. Speaker? They should also further clarify, Mr. Speaker, whether at any one time they have registered a reduction on any of their own PACs, that is the SRC, Mr. Speaker, and why, Mr. Speaker, they have continued to target sitting members of parliament, sitting senators, and trying to make a huge, capturing headlines and creating enmity between ourselves and the people, Mr. Speaker, while not revealing to the country that she has actually been increasing her salary, she has actually been increasing her sitting allowances, her mortgage, and Mr. Speaker, we need to tell the delegate.
Give him one more minute. We did not see him that the time was lapsing. Just 1 minute.
1 minute.
1 minute.
1 minute, Mr. Speaker. Thank you. Mr. Speaker, the committee should find out and try to investigate whether that chairman has carried herself in a manner that is befitting a state officer, in a manner that she has, Mr. Speaker, to clarify to us that this chair, whether she is fit to hold that public office, when she is adding herself and then hiding all this by trying to make people believe that it is the MPs who are bad. Mr. Speaker, should we get a proper recommendation, Mr. Speaker, whether the delegated committee can bring a recommendation for the removal of this chair of SRC, Mr. Speaker? I thank you.
Senator Edwin Sifuna. Okay. Senator Eddie Okech, are you on this statement? Maybe you log out from the system so that I can be able to know. Okay, Senator Wambua.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Gazette Notice number 8791 of 27th of July 2022 will go down in history as the worst Gazette notice that has ever been signed by a public officer. The Speaker, I say this because of two reasons. One, there has been serious discussion across this country on the fate and warfare of ECD teachers. Persons who were recruited as early as 2013, and they still earn as little as, in some counties, 7,000 Kenya shillings a month. I would have expected that the commission that is supposed to look into the welfare of Kenyan workers and public officers would have demanded a full implementation of the new scheme of service for ECD teachers, so that at least they earn something that they can put a meal on the table for themselves and their children. But what does this Gazette notice do, Mr. Speaker? This Gazette notice increases the salary of the chairperson of the commission. This Gazette notice, signed by the chairperson herself, increases the car grant for the chairperson of the commission. Madam Chair, this Gazette notice increases the mortgage of the chairperson.
How comes you know what? Just 1 minute for him to just conclude. You know this is.
Let me conclude, Mr. Speaker.
Just go straight to the point.
Yes, I'll go straight to the point, Mr. Speaker. Our own staffers in Parliament, their per diems have been slashed to almost zero. Now we expect our staff members of Parliament to go on official business in New York, and we give them a per diem of less than $400 per day. To be specific, it's 390 something. The Speaker, where are they supposed to sleep? What are they supposed to eat? Mr. Speaker, I asked the same question that was asked by my neighbor, the senator for Tana River. This committee, as they look into this statement, must establish whether the chairperson of SRC should continue to sit in a public office. A motion should be brought into this house and in the lower house to discuss the possibility of sending her home and ultimately actually disband that commission. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Delitu John Kinyua.
Mr. Speaker, it is disheartening for what that chair is doing. And I was recommending, Mr. Speaker, if we can co-join, delegated with Health Committee, so that they can check her because Mr. Speaker, we need to make sure we look to these officers, all their status, because you know with COVID, I am told, Mr. Speaker, if you get COVID, you might be affected your mental status. And the guess is, because many of these Kenyans were getting COVID, so I'm recommending we would include the Health Committee so that we can check as well as her faculties, Madam Speaker.
Senator
Thank you.
Kenyua, you know, I'm reading my standing orders, the contents of speeches, standing order 101. You know, you cannot remove this chair SLC through our statements in this house. There is a procedure on the removal of any state officer. And if you want to discuss the officer, standing on 101, it clarifies that you should bring a substantive motion to discuss that officer. So if you discuss, if your statement or your comment, you should really balance it. I want to try some Senator Chalgay to see whether you can balance your mind and your thoughts with standing on the 101.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It is very sad that we are discussing this. I think, Mr. Speaker, when you look under Article 230, it is very clear that 4B advise the national and county governments on remuneration and benefits of all public officers. What this Gazette notice, the SRC chair decided to remunerate, set our own in terms of allocating ourselves more mortgage salaries, Mr. Speaker, while our workers, the ECD teachers in our counties, are earning a paltry of 10,000 shillings. What can you do with 10,000 shillings, Mr. Speaker? Number two, our nurses in every county are going on strike daily, like a daily dosage that they give in hospitals, Mr. Speaker, and yet they have refused. The only thing that the SRC chair, Mr. Speaker, is to increase our salary and then use members of parliament as a punching bags. He goes and increases our mortgages, our car grant, our house allowance, our house rent, and ensures that after finishing increasing our own benefits, Mr. Speaker, she decides, Mr. Speaker, to now increase our salary and our mortgages, Mr. Speaker. Number two, Mr. Speaker, because I know there are many colleagues who want to contribute to this, I think the committee must come out strongly. The delegated committee, and I propose, Mr. Speaker, let delegated and finance and budget committee come together and give us a recommendation to remove the SRC chair for gross violation of the Constitution, Mr. Speaker, and disbanding the SRC. While we appreciate the economy is not doing better, Mr. Speaker, how can the SRC chair tell us the economy is doing badly and gives herself 10 million for car grant and 40 million for mortgages, Mr. Speaker? This issue must be handled, and I hope when time comes, Mr. Speaker, the nurses, the drivers, Mr. Speaker, and ECB teachers must be given, but just a minute, Mr. Speaker, 30 seconds.
Proceed and finish, please.
Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, when will the SRC tell us about increment of ECD teachers? When will they tell us about increment of the drivers in public sector, Mr. Speaker? About nurses? I think it's time the SRC chair and commissioners must go home. I support, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Richard Onyonka.
Mr. Speaker, I would like to congratulate my leader, Honorable Cherargei. In fact, I'm recommending that in the next government he could become the Prime Minister. Those are such wonderful words to hear. Mr. Speaker, what the SRC has done is that it has actually created a mess for the leadership of this country. They go out and make announcements. They say that members of parliament are earning unbelievable amounts of money. Then they leave our most vulnerable state officers, like my colleagues have mentioned, the ECD teachers. It is true, their salaries are 10,000 shillings a month. If you look at what the nurses are earning, nurses are getting house allowance, which is less than 3,000 shillings, Mr. Speaker. It is unacceptable that she will continue doing this. The other issue I wanted to raise, and I want to bring this to speed with my colleagues, Mr. Speaker. We receive car grants, yes, members of parliament, members of the National Assembly, and members of the Senate. But most of the work, Mr. Speaker, under devolution is being done by members of the County Assembly. And members of the County Assembly are given 1.5 million shillings, and you know how our roads are, you know how they are managing the ground, and it is impossible for them to do their oversight responsibility, Mr. Speaker. I would like the Delegated Legislation Committee to look at this matter in its whole totality. And finally, Mr. Speaker, I would like to finish it here. For people like me, and I think this is the point Honorable Mungatana was raising, and I'm not sure people got it very clear.
You want to be informed by your neighbor, Senator Okongo Mugen?
That?
You want to inform you, maybe?
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, I just wanted to inform Senator Onyonka, my neighbor from Kisi, that in fact the amount of money he's making reference to the 1.5 million car grant that was meant to assist MCAs move around the county, that amount has also been scrapped in the said Gazette notice. So, Honorable Nyonka, that amount is no longer there. SRC has scrapped it for the MCAs.
Minute to conclude your comments.
I will conclude this way, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Honorable Mogeni, for informing that. You can imagine the members of the county assembly look at us as senators who are supposed to protect their interest, and guess what they believe? We come and negotiate for ourselves, and we leave them struggling on the ground without anything. Finally, Mr. Speaker, for those members who have been in this House, at the National Assembly or at the Senate for more than 3 terms, by her changing my salary, like me who has been here for 5 terms, it means she has unconstitutionally made it impossible for me to accept that. It's just because we have not gone to court, because the international labor practice do not allow for somebody who already had accepted the terms and conditions of their employment to be changed to disadvantage them simply because the conditions have changed according to whatever circumstance. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I recommend and I support my colleagues. She must go.
I can see Senator Boni Karol is a bit agitated. Take your 2 minutes.
Yes, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this matter brings into question over this honorable state officer the issue of integrity. This Constitution, Article 75, says, Mr. Speaker, that a state officer shall behave, whether in public and official life, in private life, or in association with other persons, in a manner that avoids any conflict between personal interest and public or official duties. So when she increases her own things, how then does it sit with this law, which refuses exactly that? Mr. Speaker, this is the same lady who is walking and sitting on the pedestal of integrity when she's the same one who was commanded to release money that was not budgeted for by Parliament to members of county assemblies so that they could vote for BBI. This is the person who is saying it's a person of integrity. 3, Mr. Speaker, there's a place in Kenya called Nyembene. The member of Parliament of Nyembene in Meru, if you go and check the distance from Nyembene to Nairobi, it is the same distance it was 20 years ago, it was 1 year ago, it was yesterday, and it is today. So when she lowers the mileage claim of this member, and that distance has not reduced, how is she applying that as a principle of science? Mr. Speaker, sir, in the same issue,
2 minutes, because you are a ranking member of the House. 2 minutes.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
And there is no constituency called Nyambene in Meru. It's an area. It's just
I was saying an area. An area. I know the place. I was there when I was touring. Mr. Speaker, sir, if this lady is caring about Kenyans, in this era, when teachers have been given an overload of work in the name of CBC, we would have expected that she would have acknowledged that teachers now have got more work to do. She reviews the salary of teachers upwards. This is a self-seeker. She's not fit to hold a public office that demands for integrity. I support the statement by Senator Mukoyone Omugeni.
Senator Ojienda Tom. Senator Ojienda, do you want to make a statement, to make a comment on this statement? Sorry, not on your statement. This statement about SLC.
Since I'm in the dispatch table, let me just make... Mr. Speaker, sir, I want to support the statement by Senator Munyihaji Faki on the chair of SRC and on the serial misconduct by the chair and by the commission in gazetting guidelines for remuneration, Mr. Speaker, sir, that go way below, and Mr. Speaker, sir, would say, that are not in line with what the other state officers earn. I have looked at the Gazette notice, Mr. Speaker, sir, and apart from violating Article 27 of the Constitution, they are not only discriminatory, but they failed to do sufficient consultation to understand the work of the members of this House, Mr. Speaker, sir. Mr. Speaker, sir, of my concern is, for instance, the per diems for travel. Mr. Speaker, sir, those have been lowered without consultation. Was it that in the previous House they were better when they traveled? What happened to senators? Are there lesser senators in this session, the third Senate, than they were before? Mr. Speaker, sir, those guidelines are for rejection. And I urge that this be committed to the Committee on Delegated Legislation. And in fact, this chair should be put to explain why she did all that. These are acts, these are not violations, chair, simple violations. These are unconstitutional violations. And this is a chair that must be removed. This is misconduct of the highest order, undermines the very ethos of the Constitution. That's all, Speaker.
Senator William Cheptumo.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I chair delegated legislation in the National Assembly. And I think, Mr. Speaker, history repeats itself. Because there was a time when the former chair of SRC, Serem, behaved in a similar manner. And, Mr. Speaker, the Gazette notice that changed the entitlement of members came before my committee, Mr. Speaker, at that time. Mr. Speaker, the reason why the Statutory Instruments Act of 2013 was passed is to kill the very mischief we see today here. Mr. Speaker, the Act of Parliament provides for the establishment or the allowance of the CEO or the minister to make regulations. This is the power that the SRC chair used. But, Mr. Speaker, initially before 2013, that power was misused. That is why this House brought back the power to be able again to approve the regulations that are passed or made by a statutory body. Mr. Speaker, what happened at that time, my committee annulled that statutory instrument, the Gazette notice. Mr. Speaker, the Committee on Delegated Legislation has the powers to actually annul that particular statutory instrument. And I think, Mr. Speaker, even before thinking of removing the chair,
because there is some information he's giving the House, so give him 2 more members, 2 more minutes, I mean.
Which I think is very important. Mr. Speaker, even before we think of removing the chair, which I think should be an option, this committee has the power to annul that Gazette notice, Mr. Speaker, on the basis that it is unconstitutional. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the chapter 6 of the Constitution, Mr. Speaker, allow me to go there. Chapter 6 deals with national values. And, Mr. Speaker, that article requires every state officer not to do anything in our responsibility or his responsibility that is unconstitutional. Mr. Speaker, anything infringing on the rights of a citizen, members of this House, of the other House, is unconstitutional. Mr. Speaker, I support this particular statement by our colleague. And I think, Mr. Speaker, for it to serve as a lesson, it is important that this committee, which has the powers, should be able actually to annul this statement. The Gazette notice. I have done it before as the chair. It can be done. And if they will not do, Mr. Chair, Mr. Speaker, I can relinquish my position of chair security and become the chair of delegated, so that I do it.
Let us now get Senator Manzo Daniel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I was a member of delegated legislation in the National Assembly for 10 years, and now I am in the committee of delegated legislation here, and I've shared with our current chair and the deputy, and they have declared me as the people's chair. So I'll lead this process. I'll lead this process. One of the principles of law is that you can never be a judge of your own cause. This Gazette notice is signed by the chair herself. Her remuneration should have been done by somebody else, but not herself, and conferring a benefit to herself and her team. The other principle of law is that equity, which is fairness, is as long as the chancellor's foot. And therefore, this has been misapplied. There is no way she will go on to decide for herself, similarly together with making a judgment for herself. And again, the committee has power to annul. First of all, before they publish this Gazette, they should have approached either of the houses, either Senate or National Assembly, for approval. So they went on to make a law without permission of Parliament, the law-making body. And therefore, having not done public participation, automatically declares this Gazette notice unconstitutional, annulity, and again, there are quite a number of issues there, and therefore, so that I complete on time, the committee may then make recommendations for further action to be taken against the chair, being a public officer who is in breach of the Constitution. I thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support.
Senator Mandago. I'm almost concluding this matter. Senator Mandago, then...
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Mr. Speaker, SRC as a commission, Mr. Speaker, has not been doing justice to salaries either of public servants or state officers, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I say that because if you look at the salaries of the members of County Assembly, Mr. Speaker, who are the first line of response of public issues in this country, Mr. Speaker, the salaries are too low for the members of County Assembly to be able to perform their function effectively, Mr. Speaker. I say that, Mr. Speaker, because having served as a governor, Mr. Speaker, and realizing that this country, and in most parts of this country, the poverty levels are very high, a member of County Assembly, Mr. Speaker, on a single weekend will be handling not less than 10 arambes, Mr. Speaker. And people should never tell us arambes are not part of the functions of politicians, because these are needs of the populations we represent, Mr. Speaker. And there is no way a member of County Assembly will receive a citizen who is in dire need of facilitation to access hospital, or a very bright child from a very poor background in a very good school would perform well, missing school fees of 5,000-10,000, and you are telling us, Mr. Speaker, arambes are not the business of elected leaders. Mr. Speaker, I think SRC should review the salaries of members of County Assembly to a minimum of about 400,000, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the reduction of salaries of state officers by SRC while increasing their own salaries, Mr. Speaker, is in itself discriminatory. And I want to say, Mr. Speaker, that this SRC seem to have an attitude towards state officers, and particularly politicians in this country, Mr. Speaker. And, Mr. Speaker, we want to tell SRC that we perform a constitutional duty. It was not...
Give him 1 minute.
Yes. Mr. Speaker, And the reason I say this, SRC in itself, Mr. Speaker, the functions they perform of salary review, the commissioners and the staff there don't actually do the job. All this work is always outsourced, and all the millions of money we put in SRC in the budget for salary review is actually for paying consultants to do the work they are supposed to be doing. Mr. Speaker, I support the statement, and where possible, that commission should be brought into review. And there has been a lot of mess in public service, courtesy of SRC, Mr. Speaker. There is a serious need to rethink the role of SRC in this country, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Senator Sosi.
Mr. Speaker, I join my colleagues to also support this statement. Mr. Speaker, if you go to Article 230 of the Constitution, 235, it is very clear on the benchmark of SRC in performance of its function. And it says that in performing its function, the Commission shall take the following principles into account. I'm interested in the last one, D, which says transparency and fairness. Mr. Speaker, SRC has been conducting this process and even gazetting the changes when Parliament is not on. This gazette notice was given just a week before the general election. In 2017, they did the same thing. Mr. Speaker, this is unfair. And there is no transparency because Parliamentary Service Commission was not consulted, the county assemblies were not consulted, and I'm sure even Public Service Commission was not consulted. For that matter, I request the committee to declare that gazette notice unconstitutional and have SRC disbanded for violating the Constitution.
Senator Joyce Chepkoech Korir.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I also want to say that to echo the sentiments of my colleagues, senators, on this issue of the SRC. Honorable Speaker, the county assemblies, this house is a replica of a county assembly. And whatever we are getting in this house should also reflect to the members of the county assembly. Honorable Speaker, removing the guardrails for the state members is unfair. And I want to say, Honorable Speaker, that I am in agreement with the rest of the colleagues that this SRC should be disbanded with immediate effect. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Senator Andy Okech. And lastly, now we go to the minority leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think that I just wanted to briefly indicate that I don't think that calling for SRC disbandment is what we are up to just because this affects us. But I think that when you listen out here, Mr. Speaker, on matters as this, usually when it comes to salaries or benefit that goes with politicians, it becomes a very emotive issue, Mr. Speaker. But I think this particular gazette notice calls upon the relevant committee to come up with a way that this matter can be settled for once and for all. Because, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to issues of employment, a member of parliament is sincerely employed by the Public Service Commission to the extent that if you go to Article 30 of the Constitution, you might ask yourself, who then is enslaving a member of parliament? A person who has got, as Senator Mandago had said, has got so many responsibilities, Mr. Speaker, in villages. Somebody like a senator from Migori, when I go home, I have to go to about 8 sub-counties, Mr. Speaker, to see the needs of all my constituents. And I think that it's very critical that this does not become just an issue of politicians seeking to be given more money or seeking to be given more benefits. It's critical that we as a people who are working under Article 1, just 1 minute, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, that CRC subjects members of parliament, honorable members of parliament, who have got the most directly delegated sovereignty by the people to almost ridicule, because then we appear to be greedy. That's what the nation is told by people like CRC. When the truth, as Honorable Mandago said, is that an honorable member of parliament does not have a coin on their pocket. Today, Mr. Speaker, was with my brother, Senator of Kisumu, and I saw him assisting almost 30 people on the road just in parliament here with issues of school fee, issues of medical bills, to a tune that is so big. So I think that the committee should have a serious deliberation on this matter for once and for all, to give honorable members what is due to them, to have respect under Article 30 of the Constitution. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Milaj Abdirai.
Ningependa kuweka msisitizo, asante Bwana Spika, na msisitizo huu ni kwamba sio kwa mwenyekiti wa tume hii ambaye amejilimbikizia faida hizi zote na pesa bila kuangalia sekta nyingine ama watu wengine ambao pia wanapitia changamoto labda hata zaidi ya yeye, bali kwa mtu yoyote ambaye ataweza kuhudumu katika ofisi ya kiserikali, kwanza ajue majukumu na yale mamlaka aliyopewa, si kujipatia yeye mwenyewe binafsi, bali ni kuwafanyia kazi wananchi wa Kenya. Na ningependa kulaani vikali yeye kuweza kuondosha zile fedha ambazo wametengewa ma MCAs. Sisi tuko huku Nairobi, lakini zile simu na message ama WhatsApp groups ambazo tumeunganishwa ili tuweze kutoa michango ni nyingi. Sembuse wao ma MCAs ambao wako pale mashinani, mbona awanyime usafiri watu wanaohudumikia wananchi pale chini mashinani kabisa? Kwa hivyo ningependa kwa alama na msisitizo wa juu ya kwamba hatua kali ichukuliwe dhidi ya mwenyekiti huyu. Asante.
Senator Seki Denku, and then lastly the minority leader.
Thank you, Chair. I really want to support this statement that the county government, especially now the assembly, is a very important organ within the devolution sectors. And I understand because county assemblies play a very big role. The MCAs run from one corner of the constituency, the county, to another. They are the most affected politicians down there. So I know very well that for them not having mobility within the counties, within their wards, can be a very big effect, can bring a big effect to our members of county assembly. So I really want to request and request the relevant committee to even summon the chair of SRC to explain what parameters, why are they, or at what level are they trying to reduce these kind of allowances and mortgage to these county assembly members. And again, as my colleagues have alluded to, it is very important that we also find ways at what makes them to just add their own salaries without probably even doing consultation to the members of parliament, the Senate.
Are you also requesting for for 30 seconds?
Just a second.
Okay. Conclude, kindly.
So I think it is very important that we have the relevant committee to bring this chair to the, even to the entire house here in the Senate, to explain to us as to why and at what, where do they get these powers just to reduce the salaries of members of parliament, senators, and even the MCAs without consultation to the members. Thank you so much.
Okay, last minority Linda. Give him 4 minutes. If you need them, if you are comfortable with 2 minutes, well and good.
Asante Bwana Spika. Bwana Spika, cha kwanza ni kwamba naonelea hili bunge la Senate liweze kujiweka kama nyumba, kama kamati, ili huyu mama anayeshughulika katika hili jopo la mishahara aweze kuitwa hapa ndani ya bunge la Senate kama committee of the whole house, ili aweze kujibu maswali kutokea kwa kila seneta ambaye anahusika hapa, isikuwe delegated peke yake. Delegated wachanganyike na nyumba, ili sisi tuweze pia kupata nafasi ya kuweza kumuuliza maswali. Cha pili cha kuumiza zaidi ni kwamba askari walio mashinani ni ma MCA, na ikiwa ma MCA wanaweza benefits zao zote na allowances zote zikapigwa marufuku, ama akazisimamisha na akasema ameziondoa kabisa, hawana benefits aina yoyote, unashindwa MCA kama ndugu yangu Halwale kule nyumbani Kakamega, ambao wako na wengi sijui 12. Yes. Sasa unaweza kuimagine wale watu hao wote ambao wako wengi zaidi wameweza kupoteza mapato yao kwa sababu ya huyu mama, na ilhali walikuwa wakipata tokea zamani. Tunashindwa. Kitu cha kwanza ni kwamba sheria za utendakazi zinasema ya kwamba mshahara hauwezi kupunguzwa ama mapato hayawezi kupunguzwa. Ikiwa huwezi kuongeza, unawacha pale pale ilipo, lakini huwezi kupunguza chini. Ni jambo la kusikitisha hivi sasa tukiona huyu mama anaweza kukiuka hiyo sheria na akaweza kupunguza mishahara. Jambo lingine la kusikitisha ni upande wa wafanyikazi wetu hapa ndani ya bunge. Leo wafanyikazi mishahara yao imeregeshwa chini sana, mpaka wanapewa sijui 1400. Hiyo 1400 itakupeleka wapi? Manake huwezi kuketi mahali popote ukiwa umeondoka hapa umeenda kikazi mahali popote kama Kisumu, Kakamega, Mombasa, Kilifi, upewe 1400. Utakula hapo hapo, utatembea hapo hapo, utalala hapo hapo, utafute nyumba, utapata namna gani? Haiwezekani. Kwa hiyo jambo kama hili mimi naona ni kwamba huyu mama aje hapa ajibu maswali katika nyumba nzima.
Naomba muite mwenyekiti wa SLC. Sio mama, inakuwa labda utakuwa unamdunisha.
Yes, mwenyekiti yule mama wa SRC anayeitwa Mengichi. Asante Bwana Spika kwa kunipatia mwongozo. Bwana Spika, kitu cha kwanza kingine ambacho huyu mama amekosea ni kwamba katika uamuzi huu hakuongea na mtu yoyote ndani ya hili bunge. Ni lazima kuwe na mashauriano na wale ambao unatengeza uamuzi fulani. Sasa yeye anafanya namna hiyo, na hapa kuna public participation. Sisi tuko hapa, angetuita tungekuja tukamweleza yetu na yeye akatueleza yake, ndio akaweza kuchukua hatua. Sasa amefanya hiyo hatua na nani? Hiyo pia amekiuka upande ule wa katiba unaokuambia ni lazima uweze kuwaita wale wahusika ili uweze kujadiliana nao. La mwisho Bwana Spika, nikitaka kumalizia, utaona sasa hata wabunge wenyewe pia wamepatikana na hiyo uamuzi wa huyu mama ya kwamba wabunge wanaweza kusafiri nje, wabunge wanaweza kwenda pande mbalimbali za nchi. Lakini unakuja kuona sasa ukienda kama mahali kama ama uende mahali popote, hata kama ni Afrika Kusini, utaona ya kwamba wewe kile unachopewa cha kwenda kulala, cha kwenda kula, cha kwenda kuishi kule, hawataweza. Ni kama amevunja safari zote za kwamba wabunge wote wao wanaketi hapa, wasiende popote, wasifanye chochote, wao wakija hapa na kupokea na kwenda zao katika mashinani. Hilo tunaona pia si jambo zuri. Kwa hiyo katika maoni yangu mimi nasema ya kwamba hili jopo la kwamba kuna SRC, yule mama aliyekuwa anaitwa Mama Seremu aliongoza vizuri sana. Sara Seremu. Mama Sara Seremu. Anmengich.
Yes,
nasema yule aliyekuwa hapo awali alikuwa na afadhali kuliko huyu Mama Mengichi aliye hapo. Na sisi tunasema ya kwamba kama bunge aje hapa tuweze kumhoji, na ikiwezekana, kama ikiwezekana, hili jopo la kufanya hii mishahara sasa liondolewe ama lifutiliwe mbali kabisa. Asante Bwana Speaker.
I can see, I understand you are the last contributor to this statement, but I can see the chair and delegated has now pleased his can to make a comment. Let him give his commitment on this matter.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I am shocked beyond repair, Honorable Speaker, because I don't understand where this commission gets so much powers. Because this commission has stepped on everybody's toes, the civil servants, registrators, members of the county assembly. I know, Honorable Speaker, I've been an MCA for 10 years. During election day, we vote, and normally Kenyans vote for 6 people. But the MCA carries the biggest burden, because this gentleman is always at home. This is the guy who interacts with the constituents, the voters, and he bears the biggest burden. He's a serious rock or ATM, the way the National Assembly Speaker used to refer. So trying to strike off the allowances, the mortgage, and everything from MCAs is a crime against humanity, for that matter. So, Honorable Speaker, I have risen to quite a number of recommendations, including having this commission being brought before my committee. And I want to promise this House that as a committee, we are going to make radical recommendations that this lady should be disciplined. This commission should be disciplined because she is not above the law. She is not above in this House. She is not above anybody. So we must give her the right medicine when she comes before us as a committee. So, Honorable Speaker, it's very bad that we have been belittled and we bear the biggest burden in this country. So, Honorable Speaker, I'm anxious.
Give him 1 minute to conclude. He's the chair of the committee.
Yeah, I thank you, Honorable Speaker, for your intervention. So I am promising this House that we are going to do as expected, and I'm very sure any other time when you see this commission before us, expect some changes from us. We are going to make some serious radical recommendations. Thank you, Honorable Speaker, and it's regrettable.
Yes, what is your point of order, Senator Joyce?
Yeah, thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. As far as I thank Honorable Omugeni for bringing this statement to this House, I would also want to know whether it is in order, Honorable Speaker, for us...
Sorry, who did you say below the statement?
The Senator.
For? What's the name of the Senator? Is Mohamed Faki below the...
Oh, Faki, yeah.
Yes.
A good friend of mine. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I would want to know what has been the response of the Commission on this matter. And secondly, Honorable Speaker, has it been implemented? That is the issue that I want to know whether, is it in order for us to call him here, when we have the commission that is supposed to address that issue? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The statement stands committed to the Committee on Delegated Legislation. So when the committee, maybe you can inform members when we invite the chair, so that as many members as possible can come to ventilate their issues during that session. Let's proceed to the other statements. And now I'll be very mean with giving any comments. Senator Miraji Abdullahi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Labor and Social Welfare on the status of white card casuals employees laid off in 2009 during a restructuring exercise undertaken at the Kenya Ports Authority. In the statement, the committee should disclose the details of a memorandum of understanding dated 22nd July 2011 between KPA and its former employees, stating the enforceability of the agreement. 2, apprise the Senate on the status of all white cards casuals employees who were laid off in 2009 at the Kenya Ports Authority, noting that the authority has been employing staff on permanent basis without any due consideration to the workers who were laid off. And 3, find out the terms of employment of the laid off staff and their terms of termination, detailing why some of those laid off in 2009 had contracts of up to 224 as casual employees, and further state the relief, if any, extended by KPA to the affected staff following the laying off. Asante Bwana Spika, labda tu kwa vile watu wangu leo wananiangalia, kuna wafanyikazi 247 ambao waliweza kuwa laid off wakati wa restructuring wa KPA. Na katika vikao ambavyo vimekuwa vikiendelea baina ya Senate hata na National Assembly.
Yes, Senator, sorry, just a minute. Resume your seat. When any member is on the floor, you just resume your seat and then take your seat, then you wait.
I'm holding brief for him, so I'm using this mic. Yeah, Mr. Speaker, just is it in order for Senator Miraj to switch languages between English and Swahili?
Nimeonelea sababu siku nyingi nimekaa hapa Senator Milaju anatumia Kiswahili. Kwa hivyo vile hii statement yake kwa Kiingereza anataka kutafsiri mambo mengine kwa Kiswahili lugha ile yake ya kawaida. Kwa hivyo chukua dakika zako 2 tafadhali.
Asante Bwana Spika kwa fursa hii. Na nilikuwa napenda tu kujulisha kwamba hawa wananchi wa Kenya ambao waliweza kuwekwa kando baada ya ile restructuring waliweza kupewa matumaini ya kwamba watarejeshwa katika vikao tofauti baina yao na watu wa Senate hata na bunge la kitaifa. Lakini tatizo ni kwamba muda unayoyoma na wengine wameaga dunia, wengine wamekuwa wazee. Nilikuwa naomba tu komiti hii iweze kuweka wazi kwamba ni vipi tutaweza kuwasaidia. Je, wataajiriwa ama kama hawaajiriwi basi wapewe afueni ya kwamba wajitafutie kazi kwingine. Manake sio sawa unachukua mwananchi, unampeleka training, unamwekea paka payslip, unamwekea muda wa kwamba ni lini atakwenda retirement na hakuna mahali unamwajiri kazi. Ningependa komiti ya Labor iweze kufungua faili hii na tuweze kuwasaidia hawa watu 247 ambao waliweza kupata matatizo haya. Asante.
Asante. Let's get the other statement from Senator Professor Tom Ojenda.
Mr. Speaker, sir, thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for indulging me. I rise under Order 53, Standing Order number 53-1, to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on National Security, Defense and Foreign Relations regarding the security situation in Kisumu County. Mr. Speaker, sir, in the statement, the committee should, 1, find out the cause of the upsurge in cases of insecurity in Kisumu County in recent weeks, noting that the number of reported casualties from violent night crimes has gone up, and most of the victims who seek medical treatment at the Jaramogi Oginga Odinga Teaching and Referral Hospital are reported to have sustained head injuries and deep cuts on their bodies. It is a security situation that is of concern. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, sir, to state the measures being undertaken by both levels of government, national and county, to assure residents of Kisumu County of their safety, because the residents of Kisumu County, and specifically Kisumu Town, are living in fear of their lives. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, sir, to state the actions taken, if any, to apprehend and bring to justice the perpetrators of violent night crimes in Kisumu County. Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Thank you. Statement, the statement from Professor Tom Ojenda is committed to the Committee on National Security, Defense and Foreign Relations. And the statement by Senator Milaji is committed to the Committee on Labor and Social Welfare. Let's get another statement from Senator Alexander Muni Mudigi.
Mr. Speaker, I arise pursuant to Standing Order 53(1) to check a statement from the Standing Committee on Loans and Transportation on the unfortunate collapse of the Tana River Bridge that connect Evurore and Momenje once in Karerema, Bere North constituency in Embu County. In the statement, the committee should, 1, state why it has taken the relevant government department too long to assess the safety of the Tana Bridge for use by both motor vehicles and members of the public end of its collapse. 2, explain whether the government has available resources as a matter of urgency to construct a bridge along the Tana River to serve the people of Evurore and Momenje once. 3, inform the Senate whether the ministry and other responsible government agencies have done an assessment of other branches in the county of Embu to ascertain whether they are fit for use. 4, state any measures the government has put in place to facilitate access to public schools, such as Kiwambiti Secondary School, St. Monica Secondary School, and Kirie Secondary School, as well as hospitals like Esiara Sub-County Hospital that have been rendered inaccessible by the collapse of Tana Bridge. And 5, outline the measures the government has put in place, if any, to sustain cautions the people of Evurore and Momenje once who depend on Tana River for their livelihood, especially on sand harvesting and access to one of the biggest livestock market in East Africa, which is at Esiara. Asante, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. The statement stands committed to the Standing Committee on Loans and Transportation. Senator Godfrey Ososi.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Labor and Social Welfare on human resource audit process by the Vihiga County Public Service Board. In the statement, the committee should, 1, give reasons for inordinate delay in finalizing an audit process on salaries for all employees on both manual and IPPD payroll, particularly for the months of September 2021, which gave the expenditure as Kenya shillings 213,133,757, while an analysis of employees at the workstation established the actual total expenditure to be Kenya shillings 158,950,496.05, giving reasons for this discrepancy in salary expenditure. 2, investigate allegations that a number of employees are drawing salaries from the payroll, yet they cannot be physically traced in the county records, disclosing the particulars of these ghost workers based on the available internal data and bank account details. 3, state the targeted measures put in place by the county government to stop further loss of public funds through monthly payment to ghost workers, stating the steps taken to recover public money paid to said workers. 4, determine the number of HR audits undertaken so far in Vihiga County government, their outcomes, and specific actions taken. 5, cause the Vihiga County Service Board to appear before the committee to shed light on the matters raised herein. And lastly, 6, undertake an audit of the human resource function in counties to ascertain optimization and prudence in the use of public funds, noting that majority of counties are spending beyond the capped 30% of the budget for remuneration. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Senator Godfrey Ososi, Senator Vihiga County.
Thank you, Senator Ososi. The statement is referred to the Committee on Labor and Social Welfare. Senator Kinyua, you have 2 statements. Use any order. Maybe you can do the first one on standing on the 53-1.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You said I start with which one?
53-1.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order 53-1 to seek a statement from the Standing Committee on Land, Environment and Natural Resources on the incessant human wildlife conflict in Laikipia County. In the statement, the committee should, 1, explain the reasons for the inaction by the Kenya Wildlife Service in dealing with the incessant destruction of food crops by elephants, zebras, buffalo, and other wildlife, despite the numerous complaints by the residents of Laikipia County, especially the areas of Naibrom, Kafage, Muramati, Sirare, Mutara, Mbogoine, etc. 2, state the compensation measures and mechanism in place to compensate families affected by conflicts, particularly stating the measures the government is taking to compensate the family of one Godua Waweru Kamoshe, who was killed by an elephant in Sirare near Nyahururu. 3, cause the Kenya Wildlife Service to set up base at Sirare and undertake a thorough assessment of lost produce and provide compensation to the affected farmers. And 4th, recommend measures such as putting up of electric fences by Kenya Wildlife Service to avert possible human-wildlife conflicts in this area, given that the residents feel aggrieved by problems of animal. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. The statement is referred to the Standing Committee on Land, Environment and Natural Resources.
Can I proceed with the
Yes,
next
yes,
statement?
please. 52-1.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I raise pursuant to Standing Order 52-1 to make a statement on a matter of general topical concern, namely the plight of farmers whose crops are being destroyed by the ongoing illegal grazing in Laikipia County. Mr. Speaker, sir, the Laikipia County boasts of spectacular wildlife and majestic scenery and has long been on the country's tourist circuit as it sits against the backdrop of Mount Kenya. However, due to the debilitating drought situation currently prevailing in the country, pastoralists are illegally bringing tens of thousands of cattle to private and community lands in search of water and grazing lands, often bringing them into conflicts with the landowners and displacing wildlife. Mr. Speaker, these illegal grazers have been grazing on private farms, destroying crops in parts of Matweku, Rufere, Mirango, Githima, Wangwashe, Muramati, Dhome, Mutara, Save, and Ormoran. Though the animals are driven away by security forces, they are often brought back immediately, much to the chagrin of farmers. When they come in, they smash fences, buildings, security houses, solar panels, electricity, electric energizers, and all forms of infrastructure. Mr. Speaker, sir, the issue of illegal grazing is nothing new to Laikipia County. As far as 2016, there have been altercations between owners of private ranches and farmlands in the county and these illegal herders. One of the worst instances was in 2017, where these invasions saw thousands of cattle stolen and ranchers injured or killed and lodges destroyed by invaders, thereby affecting the tourism business in the region. Indeed, in March of the same year, Tristan Vaspoy, a former British Army officer, was shot dead by herders as he inspected some of his lodges. Suyan and Roisaba lodges were most affected before security officers contained the situation after almost a year. Mr. Speaker, sir, it is alleged that most of these cattle belong to senior government officials and even politicians. Perhaps this might explain the reason for this instance problem. Although the government has warned herders invading private farms to graze their livestock in Laikipia County, that stern action will be taken against them. This has not stopped these armed invaders, mostly from neighboring counties, who have invaded people's farms and conservancies with their livestock and continue grazing in the areas forcefully. Mr. Speaker, sir, pastoralists wishing to graze their livestock in private farms and conservancies should adhere to the grazing guidelines by owners, where they are charged a certain amount of money per animal to graze. They should not graze their animals with impunity on people's farms, and the government has the responsibility to protect private property. Mr. Speaker, sir, much as we may sympathize due to the fact that the increasing intensity of drought is amplifying the vulnerability of the community and the ability to cope, and that the prolonged drought has led to majority of pastoralist community losing their livestock, it should not warrant the unbecoming behavior currently being perpetrated in Laikipia County. It is incumbent upon the government to actualize buying of livestock for slaughter in order to feed starving residents under the livestock offtake program, overseen by the National Drought Management Authority. Mr. Speaker, sir, allow me to conclude by reiterating that private property should be respected. Mr. Speaker, I repeat, should be respected. If the government is unable to offer protection to these farmers, they should be compensated for the huge losses brought upon them by the illegal grazers out of control's action. Mr. Speaker, I thank you, and peoples of Laikipia are looking forward for you to protect them, Mr. Speaker, from these illegal grazers who have turned Laikipia to their grazing grounds and shooting people at any time of the day, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Rendama Olekina, 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me appreciate you giving me an opportunity to comment on this matter, which is a very, very, very emotive matter. This is an issue that we've been dealing with for, I think, now, for over 2 decades. The biggest challenge that we have, which all of us must empathize, is on the rights of the Maasai people, the rights of the pastoralists. We are people who do not understand what a title deed is. I've sat here and I listened to my colleague narrates about private property, the rights for private property, for people to respect private property. Yet we know that our lands and territories have been encroached upon by successive governments, individuals owning over 100,000 acres of land. Yet we, the people who are the original inhabitants of that land, do not have that land. People who are chased away. So, Mr. Speaker, when we talk about life, your life is not more important than a life of a pastoralist. Those pastoralists who are there, the cows which are being killed, Mr. Speaker, also have a right. So I think the most important thing that we must do is to admit and accept the fact that...
Just a minute, Senator Olekina. What is your point of order, Senator Chalgin?
When you look at the standing order number 101 on the contents of speech, and also when you look about enforcement of environmental rights under the Constitution of Kenya and the chapter on, it talks about, it recognizes the presence of private land, and also talks about land holding by ownership of the land, community land, public land. The under Article 61, 62, 63, 64, the lands have been classified. So the senator is out of order you are out of order, understanding 101, Senator Ledama, and you are also out of order by imputing, Mr. Speaker, that there is no classification of land in Kenya. So it doesn't mean, even if we empathize and sympathize with the pastoralists, that they are looking for where they can graze the animals, it does not give them unfettered right to go and graze on private property. And he's misleading the nation. Mr. Speaker, we cannot allow him to say that the government has encroached land. If he has facts, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, if he has, as I conclude on classification of land, Mr. Speaker, if he has evidence, Mr. Speaker, he must table instead of making some sweeping statements.
Okay, thank you. Let me get the point of order from the owner of the statement. Senator Kenywa.
Mr. Speaker, I can feel Olekina. He has just come, he has not even read my statement. It is so clear, Mr. Speaker, I have not talked anywhere about pastoralists. I have talked illegal grazers. Mr. Speaker, I'm clear in my mind. It is illegal grazers. If somebody is grazing illegally, it does not matter. He's even now imputing. He's talking about Maasais. I have not said anything about Maasais. We have Maasais in Laikipia. We are talking about illegal grazers, Mr. Speaker.
You know the owner of the statement is Senator Kenywa, Senator Redama.
He has not read, Mr. Speaker.
So don't put tribes into a statement, tribes and people.
Because,
and
Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, there was a statement. Allow me to finish. Allow me to finish.
Can you finish? Resume your seat, random.
Mr. Speaker, the same issue. We had the same kind of statement that came from the Honorable Senator from Samburu about the insecurity. People are being killed in Samburu as well. We are talking about these illegal grazers that can end up bringing conflict. We're not talking about the good Maasais who are in Laikipia. They are borrowing where they want to graze their land. We have Maasais in Laikipia. Laikipia is cosmopolitan. Mr. Speaker, we have everybody in Laikipia. For Lekina to come and here and insinuate about, we are talking about Maasais in Laikipia, nothing can be further from the truth, Mr. Speaker. We are talking about illegal grazers. It does not matter whether the illegal grazer is a Kikuyu, he's an illegal grazer. If he's a Samburu, he's an illegal grazer. If he's a Karenjin, he's an illegal grazer. And we are supposed to deal with them cacophoniously, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Just finish up your comment. And this is just a comment you are making.
Mr. Speaker, you know, the distinguished senator from Laikipia does not have to tell us that he's wearing a tie for us to know that he's wearing a tie. We can see. Mr. Speaker, the pastoralists are people who move from one place to another. And it is not an issue of debate here. History will judge me, or it will judge you, and it will judge all of us, that that land originally belonged to the Maasai people who live there. So, Mr. Speaker, I have read the content of the statement, and I am debating on the content of the statement. So, Mr. Speaker, if you allow me to finish without unnecessary point of orders and unnecessary wrong interpretation of standing orders, Mr. Speaker, I'll be able to conclude.
You know, in this statement, because I've read it together when he was
Mr. Speaker,
presenting,
it's a point of debate.
There is no LR number for any part of land.
Mr. Speaker,
there is no specific
wrong
piece
for
of land.
anybody to control how I debate in this House, Mr. Speaker, unless.
But I want to guide you.
If I'm imputing improper motive on anybody. Mr. Speaker, allow me to finish my debate.
I'm guiding you as a chair of this House. I'm guiding you that this statement has no specific parts of land. It is talking of people who are grazing other landowners' property. And there is no specific piece of land that belongs to a Maasai or somebody else, which has been quoted.
I'll be guided. But, Mr. Speaker, my point is very clear, and it doesn't deviate from the content of this.
I'll finish because I'm giving you 3 minutes.
If you give me,
and now
I've been interrupted. Give me 30 seconds and I'll finish.
22.
Okay?
22 seconds.
Mr. Speaker, it is a little bit hypocritical if we stand here and we say we do not understand where history has taken us from. It is wrong for us to say, and I've repeated this, the fact that I do not understand the concept of a title deed does not deny me my rights as a Kenyan. What we are talking about here are people who are being killed. We have seen pastoralist cows. If the distinguished senator will be happy with me using the word pastoralist instead of using the word Maasais, I'll be happy to do that. But we have seen pastoralist cows being killed when they are grazing. Now we have a problem. This is a security issue, Mr. Speaker. And the fact that they have rights, your rights end where mine begins. The rights of those pastoralists must also be protected. So, Mr. Speaker, to conclude, what I may request you to do is that when you commit this statement, let us be objective. Let us also consider those people because they are Kenyans and they are taxpayers just like you. And these are the kind of liberties and rights that I'm prepared to pursue for the rest of my life. Our people shall be free. Their rights cannot be taken away from them. And we sit here and we say we are happy.
Your time is up, Senator Rekina. Let us.
Yeah, sat down. I wanted
Yes, please. Senator Boni Karwale.
Mr. Speaker, this is very sad. In the meaning of Standing Order number 121 and number 122, 121, the honorable member has been disorderly. 122, the honorable member has been grossly disorderly. If 67 senators will start arguing with you, Mr. Speaker, and start exchanging with you, there can be no transaction of business. With all due respect to the honorable senator, he is a new member of parliament. I'm telling you, young man. You don't know these things. If you are deep, you would respect the chair. I beg you. This arrogance that you are demonstrating does not earn you any bonker points whatsoever. Mr. Speaker,
no.
On strength of standing order.
No point of order, Senator Rekina.
Mr. Speaker.
No point of order.
Mr. Speaker, for the respect of this House, the chair must order the member to withdraw, apologize, and seeing his arrogance, if he fails, throw him out. Those are our standing orders.
Senator Mboni Karwale, I think I disposed of that issue with him, but I want to warn him he is trending on dangerous grounds. Next time, Senator Olekina, you bang standing orders on my face, I'm telling you, I'll throw you out for a couple of days. Where I come from and Masais, we are tougher than Masais, my friend. So Senator Olekina, yes. Honorable Senators, you have a visiting group of teachers and students from Naivasha High School in Nakuru County. Honorable Senators, in the public gallery, we have 60 students accompanied by 2 teachers from Naivasha High School in Nakuru County who are in the Senate on an education tour. Honorable Senators, in our usual tradition of receiving and welcoming visitors to Parliament, I extend a warm welcome to them, and on behalf of the Senate and on my own behalf, wish them a fruitful visit. I thank you. Senator Tabitha Karanja.
I also rise to welcome the Naivasha High School. So happy to have you here today. I'm very sure that this is not the first, maybe the Senate, you've also gone to the Parliament, and I'm sure you've learned a lot. And take the advantage that you have. I know during our time we never got these advantages, and we are here now being the Senator of Nakuru County, so you stand a better chance than us. So wishing you all the best, and you go home, say hi to everyone, and looking forward to see you many, many times here. Thank you. We are here just preparing for you people. I know you are the next senators when it's come to the Nakuru County. Thank you very much, and all the best. God bless. Thank you.
You know, Senator Kenyan did not indicate the wish of his statement, but this should go maybe to the Committee on Lands. Committee on Lands. Senator Kenyan, approach the chair kindly. Okay, after my consultations, the statement is referred to the Committee on Security. Next order. No, sorry. We have another statement understanding under 1A by the Chair Energy Committee, Senator Wamatinga Wahome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, sir. I like to make a statement a statement on the Committee of Energy relating to matters of which the committee is responsible pursuant to Standing Order 56-1A. Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise under Orders 56-1A to make a statement relating to matter in which the committee is responsible. I wish to make a statement on the high cost of energy in the country. Mr. Speaker, sir, let me start by thanking the members for unanimously electing me as the chairperson. Mr. Speaker, sir, the cost of energy is a fundamental driver in any economy and society. In Kenya, that the cost has increased significantly, affecting the cost of living negatively. Farmers are unable to plow land using tractors, irrigate their crops because the high cost of fuel and electricity. Mr. Speaker, sir, as a country, if we want to industrialize and attract international manufacturing firms, then the cost of power has to be lowered.
If we follow the migratory patterns of international manufacturing firms, you will see that as the cost of production increased in North America and Europe, the companies moved to China, India, and Africa. Mr. Speaker, sir, the current average cost of electricity per Kenya shillings 25, meaning that for Kenya shillings 1,000, you can only get 40 units. For Kenya shillings 100, you can only get 4 tokens. Mr. Speaker, sir, energy is a factor of production, and for us to spur our manufacturing and cottage industries as envisaged in the establishment of the special economic zones in Naivasha and Dongokudu and other parts of the country, we need to ensure that the cost of energy is lowered. My committee is planning to engage the relevant stakeholders in the energy sector to ensure that this matter is addressed amicably. Mr. Speaker, sir, the total installed capacity with the inclusion of the off-grid power is 2,949 megawatts. The energy mix is as follows: geothermal 863.1 megawatts, hydro 838, wind 435, solar unfortunately only 90, thermal sadly 720, off-grid is 34.31. Mr. Speaker, sir, the above mix indicates 75% of electricity is done through renewable sources, while only 24% is through thermal or diesel. It is evident that renewable sources of power dominates our energy mix, and electricity should therefore be cheaper. Mr. Speaker, sir, according to the audited accounts ending financial year June 2021, Kenyan supplied 8,443 gigawatt hours, that which makes 70%, and was paid 44,805,290,000 shillings, billion shillings, which is 44%. The IPPs, Mr. Speaker, sir, on the other hand, supplied 3,000, that is less than half, that is about 30% of the total power, and were paid 56 billion, over 56 billion. Mr. Speaker, sir, Kenyan charges only 5 shillings and 41 cents per unit, while IPP charges between 9 shillings, Mr. Speaker, sir, and 173 shillings per unit. As a committee, we note that the cost of electricity charged by the IPP is 30 times compared to what Kenyan charges. Mr. Speaker, sir, the above analysis shows that if Kenyan supplied 100% of power consumed, the amount paid would have been 64 billion and some cents. This have been a net saving, this could have been a net saving of 34 billion. Enough, Mr. Speaker, sir, to construct 37 level 4 hospitals. Mr. Speaker, sir, the contracts signed by the IPPs have an average length of between 23 and 27 years. A majority of the IPPs expire in 2030. There are IPPs contracts that have an expiry date of January 2043. So sad, Mr. Speaker. This mode of payment adopted with the IPP is to take pay. KPLC has to pay for what has been generated, irregardless of whether it has been consumed or not. Mr. Speaker, sir, a very sad occurrence indeed. Mr. Speaker, sir, my committee intends to study the report of the Presidential Task Force on IPP that was presented to His Excellency the President last year, and provide further guidance to this august House. Mr. Speaker, sir, counties of Turkana, Marsabit, Garissa, Wajir, and Mandela are not connected to the national grid. These counties use generators that are powered by diesel for electricity. We have IPPs in these counties, namely like Marsabit, we have wind power, but Mr. Speaker, sir, they have not been connected to these grids. Mr. Speaker, sir, 26.94 of prepaid bills of the county fuel energy charge, meaning that every year, every Kenya shillings 100, Kenya shillings 26.94 goes for fuel charge. That again, very unfortunate, Mr. Speaker, sir. Even as we look, Mr. Speaker, sir, even as we look at the cost of production, we also have to look at the entire value chain. No matter how much cheap electricity is generated, it will do people no good if it does not get to the end user on time and reliably. Mr. Speaker, sir, The issue of faulty transformers has continued to dodge Kenya Power and Lightning. Just recently, the Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Energy, directed the Kenya Power to repair and install 10,000 faulty transformers that were lying in the yard in Loisabu. It is very sad that during procurement process, the substandard transformers were ordered all in the name of making money or giving kickbacks. Mr. Speaker, sir, faulty transformers have been the cause of prolonged power blackout in many counties. In Nandi alone, 800 transformers are faulty, which has caused reduced productivity in companies and increased insecurity. Mr. Speaker, sir, as a committee, we want to tell Kenya Power and Lighting Company to ensure that when procuring transformers, they should be ordered directly from reputable manufacturers. Additionally, those involved in the procurement process for any substandard equipment should be interdicted and charged in the court of law. Mr. Speaker, sir, I also have to mention that Kenya Power and Lighting and has the only take-off power in the country continues to make losses on a commodity that they alone sell. Kenya Power operates as a monopoly, and the common sense would require that they make extreme profits. It is very clear, Mr. Speaker, sir, that there are governance and accountability issues in Kenya Power. Mr. Speaker, sir, audited account by the Auditor General for the financial year ending 30 June 2021 revealed that Kenya Power current liabilities are 116 trillion and some figures, which is far above its current assets of only 49 billion. The difference of about 66 billion, Mr. Speaker, sir, trillion, Mr. Speaker, sir. An impairment loss of 205 million and on stalled projects was incurred. This was in respect to projects that were part of the contract sum was paid for yet no activities transpired in those projects for the last 3 years. Mr. Speaker, sir, 159 million was related to fraudulent payments to contractors which are subject to court cases. I am happy that Kenya Power has now taken full responsibility of selling prepaid token from vendors as it was curbed with corruption. As a way forward, Mr. Speaker, sir, from the above, it is very important, it is very clear that radical surgery is required in the energy sector. To begin with, IPPs should be given incentive to switch electricity to solar as a mode of production from the diesel powered as a means of production for electricity. This should be phased out. This will reduce the carbon emission that has increased the global warming due to carbon emissions. Additionally, it will be in line with the President's goal to switch to 100% renewable energy by the year 2030. The counties of Turkana, Marsabit, Garissa, Wajir, and Mandela should be added to the grid. This should be done by working with the IPPs, like Turkana Wind Power and Garissa Solar Power in collaboration with Kentraco can provide power to these counties. In addition, Kenya Power has agreed with Ethiopia Power to purchase electricity at a cost of only 9 shillings and 4 cents per unit, which is far, far much cheaper than the majority of the IPP, Mr. Speaker, sir. The denomination of all upcoming IPPs should be done using Kenya shilling. This would caution Kenyans in the fluctuation of foreign currency. 5.42% of any prepaid bills goes to forex exchange. Mr. Speaker, sir, the cost of solar installation is high. Regulations put in place for dealers and contractors are very punitive, while solar photovoltaic equipment have been zero-rated. Applying for a tax refund from KLA is a cumbersome process. IPPs, which include Kenyans, should be allowed to sell power directly to consumers. My committee will be looking to make changes in legislation that will facilitate this. Finally, Mr. Speaker, sir, as we push for the reduction of cost of power, as citizens, we have a prudent we have to be prudent in how we use power. I walk into many facilities will feel a lot of wastage. Regulations should be put in place that will require in facilities to install motion sensors that will switch off power on which someone enters a room and power off automatically when there is no activity. A culture of switch-off light bulbs and equipment when not in use should be adopted in this country as a way of saving energy. As the Energy Committee, we will engage stakeholders in the energy sector to bring the cost of power down. We will oversight the executive and push for enacting of laws and policies to reduce and eliminate taxation on renewable energy products and machines and spur industrialization in this country. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to present on this important issue. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
The Honorable Matinga, that was quite a statement. And I know, I'm aware the honorable members would love to also contribute to your statement. I will invite the Honorable Senator for Nairobi County, Sifuna Edwin Watenya. We will also minimize the time we will spend on this, so I will request that we do 2 minutes per person.
Mr.
So
Speaker,
that we allow everyone else to contribute. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. I rise to support the statement by the chair of my Energy Committee. Mr. Speaker, just as a way of illustration, this afternoon, I had my assistant purchase a 100 shilling token, Mr. Speaker. This is the average token that is purchased by a Nairobi hustler. Mr. Speaker, out of 100 shillings, we were only able to purchase 3.9 units of electricity. The token amount out of the 100 is 49.13 shillings, meaning, Mr. Speaker, 51% of the money that a hustler uses to buy electricity goes to taxes and levies. Out of that, the fuel energy charge, the fuel charge is 27 shillings, Mr. Speaker. And the problem has been highlighted very well and capably by the chairperson, that in fact this country entered into very expensive deals, these take-or-pay deals with independent power producers that rely on thermal energy to produce this energy, electricity, that is finishing our people, Mr. Speaker. So here in Nairobi, for instance, the most critical case is the case of the people of Mukuru kwa Ruben, Mr. Speaker. They have to rely on informal power connections because these former and current employees of KPLC, especially at the Nairobi South office, they are the ones who have forced the people of Mukuru to rely on electricity that is informally supplied. There is such rampant, stealing and theft of electricity equipment, including transformers, including meters, and there is simply no reliable electricity in Mukuru. Mr. Speaker, during the campaign, we were there and we saw for ourselves, for every 2 minutes that a person in Kwaruben, Mr. Speaker, just 1 minute, every 2 minutes that a person in Kwaruben receives electricity, 5 minutes is spent in darkness. So the electricity will be available for 2 minutes and disappear for 5 minutes. We saw it ourselves because we could not even use our public address machines when we were there. So, Mr. Speaker, we need a total review and overhaul of this particular energy sector, and I'm willing and happy that I'm willing to support my chairman, and I'm happy that I'm part of the Committee on Energy. This simply cannot be that you say we're benefiting from the subsidy. He knows that he used to buy kerosene at 127 because there was a
Samson Kiprotich.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I agree that there is still a problem, largely with the expensive energy, both Kenya Power and, of course, the cost of fuel, which continues to drive the cost of electricity up. In Nandi, as we have been told, Mr. Speaker, we have over 800 faulty transformers in Nandi alone. So you can imagine we have suffered massive losses, apart from even usage of electricity to read also our products. You know, we use cooling cooling plants that are used to cooling milk. And I know Senator Ledama is happy to listen to this. 800 transformers, Mr. Speaker, it is very unfortunate. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, somebody somewhere must be held accountable, and I hope the DPP must ensure the conclusion and prosecution of the people who acquired these faulty transformers are brought to book, because in Nandi, almost the ones that were put in primary schools, they are faulty. I receive phone calls. We try to work around it, Mr. Speaker, and I think it is important that the prosecution of those people who participated in purchase of faulty transformers comes to a conclusion. Number two, Mr. Speaker, we need to open the monopoly. I agree with the committee that let us open the monopoly of Kenya Power, allow Kengen to sell directly, Mr. Speaker. The third point I want to make, Mr. Speaker, is on the independent power producers. Why do we use $1 to buy from them? Why don't you we use Kenya shillings so that we save this money, Mr. Speaker. And these IPPs sometimes are generated here in Kenya. So, Mr. Speaker, we must use the Kenya shillings. And finally, we must move to renewable energy. We need to zero rate. I remember in last session, we fought so hard to ensure that we have zero-rated solar purchase panels and installations, Mr. Speaker, so that in as much like areas that have been mentioned by the chair, the northern part, there is a lot of sun there, Mr. Speaker, we can still use that renewable energy through solar energy by providing a zero-rated, Mr. Speaker. But I want to confirm to the country and this House as I conclude, Mr. Speaker, the Kenya Kwanza is committed in ensuring that the cost of energy and power comes down, Mr. Speaker. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Cherargei. I hope you are not directing the DPP. As you are aware, the office of the DPP under Article 157 of the Constitution is independent of any direction. I believe your statement was not a direction to the DPP. Thank you very much. Honorable Senator Olekina Ledama from Narok, kindly.
Mr. Speaker, let me begin by thanking my chair for bringing this very, very important statement. Mr. Speaker, I was a member of the Energy Committee in the last Parliament, and we did quite a lot of work in regards to trying to deal with the issue of cost of electricity. One of the biggest problems that we had was that Kenya Power and Lighting Company borrowed money in US dollars currency at very, very high interest rates. I think one of the things that we must do now is to be able to pursue so that we can be able to reduce those or refinance those loans so that we can be able to tackle that issue that way. Mr. Speaker, the second big problem that I hope that our committee and this Senate will be able to assist us to be able to deal with is the issue of faulty transformers. The issue of faulty transformers, Mr. Speaker, is like musical chairs, a blame game, where REREC says that when we handed over electricity to Kenya Power and Lighting, the transformers were faulty. When you go to Kenya Power and Lighting, they say that we were never handed over this electricity. So we need to be able to carry out an audit to establish, first of all, two things. Number one, we need to know, out of the 47 counties, what is the access to electricity in each and every county. That is issue number one. Number two, Mr. Speaker, because our time is limited on this matter, is that we now must support this issue of doing away with the monopoly of Kenya Power. In Narok County, Mr. Speaker, Transmara Sugar Company can produce electricity and sell that electricity in the whole of Narok County using bagasse. Mr. Speaker, 30 more seconds, please. Mr. Speaker, we need, and I'm happy that the President talked about trying to look at this environment of electricity monopoly by Kenya Power and Lighting. We need to be able to have more off-takers. That's issue number one. Number two, we need to encourage more mini-grids in our country. If Narok County, the bagasse, because I hear a lot of people complaining that the Transmara Sugar Company is releasing the bagasse into the river. If we encourage, and I know that they have used charcoal, briquettes, that can be able to be used so that we reduce the use of electricity. So, Mr. Speaker, this is a matter
The Honorable Senator, your time is up, and thank you for being a compliant Senator. The Honorable Senator for Tana River, Mugatana, Danson, Boya. Honorable Senator, have you pressed the MIC button? Then you had not. Now it is on. Go ahead. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, thank you for giving me 2 minutes. And I'll go straight to the point. Mr. Speaker, these IPPs, the independent power producers who signed very punitive and unconscionable contracts against the people of Kenya, these people signed these documents with people within government
there were officers within government. There were people working in the energy sector mandated to protect Kenyans. Instead, they colluded to create contracts that our chairman for energy said, even when the units are not being consumed, they will still be paid. Mr. Speaker, we need to pick it up from where the chairman said that we need to look at who are these people who signed, who did these mistakes. Are they now relaxing somewhere as we are bearing the cost, like Honorable Sifuna said? We are all suffering, Mr. Speaker, because of some people who deliberately colluded with these IPPs, Mr. Speaker, to corruptly acquire wealth, Mr. Speaker. Because every person who entered this industry at that time when they were creating some artificial shortages, they made billions of shillings, Mr. Speaker. And to hear that these contracts are going all the way 27 years, Mr. Speaker, some of the people who signed these contracts are just there enjoying themselves as the rest of this country is paying this debt. Mr. Speaker, I would encourage the Energy Committee to bring back historical injustice to be corrected. Mr. Speaker, I repeat, we need to correct some of this because it is the only way that we are going to set the standard for future people who be serving in this industry, and they are given the mandate by the people of Kenya to act in their best interest, not the way these people have done. Mr. Speaker, prosecutions must be called. People must be taken and they must account. I beg to support. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mungatana, for your comments on the statement. Senator for Homa Bay, Kajwang Moses Otieno.
Oh, thank you. Mr. Speaker, this is a very, very important statement, and I want to congratulate the chair of the Energy Committee for bringing it before the Senate. Energy and transport infrastructure are very, very important conditions for sustainable growth. And Mr. Speaker, with Kenya generating about 3,000 megawatts, I don't think that that will take us to our desired position of being a truly middle income economy. Mr. Speaker, I want to urge the chair to look at the distinction between policy implementation and oversight. As Senate, our role will be to oversight the actions of the executive and the actions of state players. I want to encourage the Energy Committee to borrow a leaf from the first Senate that set up a special inquiry into the affairs of Kenya Airways. That generated a report that came to the floor of this House, and I'd like the chair to perhaps consider taking that approach so that you can call all these IPPs, you can interrogate all the reports that are within this space, and you can bring an actionable report before this House. Mr. Speaker, I also wish that the Energy Committee would look at the regulatory framework in terms of those who wish to put electricity into the national grid. I've got two investors in my county. One was setting up a 40-megawatt solar plant in Nyakwere Hills, the border of Homa Bay and Kisumu. Mr. Speaker, he was frustrated by the regulators, despite securing a lot of funding from the US government, and that project did not kick off. We had another investor who set up a mini-grid on Remba Island. And Mr. Speaker, that mini-grid had to be shut down by the regulator simply because they had not followed some paperwork and they had not ticked some boxes. So let's have a regulatory framework that makes it easy and cheap and efficient for Kenyans to supply electricity in the national grid, rather than one that favors the IPPs that have been demonstrated to be capturing the state. Mr. Speaker, I support this statement.
Thank you very much, Honorable Senator Kajwang. Senator Mandago Jackson Kiblagat was in Gishu.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I support the statement by the Chair of the Energy Committee. And Mr. Speaker,
Senator, you are not.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, it is so sad that in this country we can have contracts of IPPs that are so punitive to the nation, Mr. Speaker, consuming thermal power. Mr. Speaker, as you are aware, the issue of climate change and the need for renewable clean energy in the globe is not only a concern of the human race, Mr. Speaker, but it's also, Mr. Speaker, a cheaper way of generating energy, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would like the Energy Committee to also look into the various tariffs and regulations that has made it so difficult, Mr. Speaker, for renewable energy, particularly the solar energy, to be used in this country, Mr. Speaker. As you are aware, Mr. Speaker, recently taxes were levied upon solar products, making it expensive, Mr. Speaker, to generate energy through the natural resource of solar, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is surprising that Kenya Power can make millions of losses, Mr. Speaker, when it is a monopoly that is selling power to the citizens of this country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in the statement of the Chair for Energy, he has alluded to the Electrocana wind power, supplying energy to various counties, Mr. Speaker. I do support that, Mr. Speaker, but on the same note, that Lake Victoria wind power must be investigated, Mr. Speaker. As you are aware, that is part of the projects that caused electricity bills to be increased arbitrarily by Kenya Power to cover the losses that they generated and created through the Lake Turkana wind power, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there is need for Kenya Power to optimize on the transformers already in various parts of this country, Mr. Speaker, where you will find one transformer serving 2 families, Mr. Speaker, while the transformer's capacity to serve more than 200 households, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, Kenya Power should concentrate in optimizing the already existing transformers as they look into the faulty transformers, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, they should also...
Cheru, you've signed in as Madzayo, Stewart Mashiru, Senator for Kilifi. Very well. I hope then you will properly represent the office of the acting.
Yes. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I stand in for the minority leader who has been called for a few urgent matters. I think that I wanted to humbly say, and this one, Chair of the Energy Committee, it's very critical that issues of energy and food are some of the issues that are directly related to policy, as my brother Senator Kajiado of Mutembei had said. And I think that is critical that where we find ourselves today as a nation, even as you consider this matter, the Chair of Energy Committee, it's very critical that you find a nexus with the executive. Because the moment you have declared that food and energy have to go to the market, then it is subject to market forces. Because the high cost of energy that we see today in the country is truly as a function of demand and supply as we see it. Because if you look at the regulator in our economy today, EPRA basically uses the 3 adjustment indices or variables to look at energy prices. They use the fuel, this is confusing, but it's fine. They use fuel, forex, and inflation. But this fuel surcharge, for instance, which is the biggest variable in energy issues, has skyrocketed highest in the last month, where we have seen a historic 6.7 rise in the cost of surcharge, because these issues have been left to the market forces. I think it is critical that the nexus, just 1 minute, Mr. Speaker, enjoying the right of the minority leader. I think that it's critical that we review the policy that energy in its all senses should not be considered an issue of consumption. it is an issue of production, because if the president chooses, for instance, to say that we are going to subsidize things like fertilizer and not energy, which directly goes to production, then as a country, we are born to have these kind of problems. Because you remember that in January, when the former president cut these energy issues, for the first time, last month is when we saw the increase in energy with about 15.7%. So I think that just find a way of ensuring that there's a nexus between policy that defines the issue of subsidies on energy as a function of production instead of a function of consumption. Then
Senator, thank you very much. Senator Karungo Thangwa Paul Kiambu.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I think as a House, we stand a very good chance of liberating this nation by coming up with the legislations that are going to help the executive lower the cost of energy or electricity in this country. Mr. Speaker, I remember during the President's address to this House, he mentioned that he's going to allow cooperatives to generate power and to sell power within their areas of operations. Mr. Speaker, I would urge the committee, as we try to lower the cost of energy in this country, to explore what the President meant by that, so that at least we can allow those who are able to form cooperatives and generate power. Maybe they come from areas where there is a high speed of water flow. Maybe they can use solar and generate power. Maybe the counties themselves can turn waste to energy. And the kind of energy they use, the remaining, or I'm looking for the right word, they can hook it to the national grid. So, Mr. Speaker, I believe there is so many things we can explore from what the President meant during his address. And I believe this committee is up to the task, and we can come up with a legislation that will help lower the cost of production and lower the cost of energy in this country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Thangwa. Senator Oyomo Beatrice Akinyi.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me the chance. I support from the onset the statement by the chairman of the Energy Committee. Honorable Speaker, my heart bleeds each time there's a mention of faulty transformers. In Mutembei County, where I come from, all the transformers that were brought to the county were all faulty. 3/4 of them were faulty. It is so unfortunate that transformers were supplied and taken to schools under the last mile connectivity program. And it is so unfortunate that those transformers, 3/4 of them, remain inactive, rendering our schools dark and all the public facilities on which these transformers were built. Honorable Speaker, it is also worth noticing that energy is an enabler of development. And as I support, I would like to also insist that the Rural Electrification Authority must also answer for all the transformers that remain inactive in this country, and particularly Mutembei County, where I come from. Our people did not get value for money with the supplies of the transformers, and it is unfortunate somebody was paid for this supply, and our place remains dark. I support.
Thank you very much, Senator Beatrice. Senator Keroche Tabitha Karanja.
I also want to thank the chairman chairman on the energy, Senator Wamatangi, for bringing this important statement, because I know Kenya Kwanza has, in its plan, they have on how they are going to bring energy down. Bringing energy down means lowering the manufacturing cost and ensuring that we lower the cost of living. But now mine is to mention that Naivasha, and particularly Nakuru County, produces 50% of the energy or the power that we use in the whole of the country. And when you come around at Naivasha, even at night, you find it's dark. There's no street lights. The people living around there, they have no power. In their rural areas, you find there is no power. So I'm so happy and welcoming the new energy minister. Even as we talk of lowering the energy, the power, we should be talking of where that energy comes from. That is Nakuru County, the Kenyan, geothermal, or Karia, where we produce 50% of all the energy that is used here in Kenya. So it means Nakuru, Naivasha, Nakuru County should be given cheaper, lower rate than any other part of this country. And we'll be pushing for that, we'll be fighting for that to ensure that we as the producers, we enjoy and we enjoy that resource comes from Nakuru County, particularly Naivasha. So, thank you, Wamatangi. We'll be talking more on this because I'll be pushing to ensure that Nakuru County, the energy rate becomes lower than any other part of this country, because that is where the energy is coming from. Thank you, and we'll be seeing you many times. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much, Senator Tabitha Keroche. I want us to close on this, but I'm seeing there is one last request by Senator Asige. So I'll invite Senator Asige Kokekehi Crystal to also give her comments on the statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I wanted to chime in on this discussion about energy. I am a person that likes to ask questions because questions leads to research and research leads to more knowledge. On the comments that have been made about solar power is incredibly useful, especially for tropical countries like we have in Africa that have a lot of solar energy throughout the year. However, Mr. Speaker, I believe the issue with solar energy is not the 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Solar that we do get and can harness, especially if you have a use case. I think the problem begins at night, Mr. Speaker, because at night, when it comes to nighttime, it means that we need lithium batteries in order to store that solar power that has been harnessed during the day. And in my research, Mr. Speaker, lithium companies are selling their batteries at extraordinary rates, and that is actually the problem. So when we're looking into, and when the Committee of Energy is looking into solar power and how we can harness it more here in the country, we need not look at it being an all-encompassing positive through getting solar energy, but we also need to look on the flip side, Mr. Speaker, which is how are we going to store this energy, because that is the problem. In South Africa, I believe that just in the last year, they used around 100 megawatts of solar energy because they have more technology around lithium batteries. But in Kenya, I believe last year we used maybe just 30 to 40 megawatts. I think the issue is, and should be looked into, the pricing. How can we work together with these lithium companies to make their prices lower? Because, Mr. Speaker, if an average household was to put up solar panels and also get lithium batteries to store in the evenings, then they would have about 6 to 7 years of payback rate to cover the expense that they have incurred from buying these batteries. But for a company, for a factory, for an organization, university, one that uses a lot of solar power and has the money to afford these batteries, they could pay back in about 2 years' time. So when we're looking at solar power, to the chair of the Energy Committee, I would also encourage that we look into lithium batteries and how we can make them more affordable, not just to big companies and factories that can afford it, but also to the smaller households across the country. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator Sige. I was generous to allow you to go beyond the time I had allowed the rest of the senators, because I wanted to listen to the cost of lithium and how the cost is generally exorbitant. Lastly, Senator Mundigi Alex Munyi. I'll lock you out in the next 1 minute. Go ahead, Senator.
Yangu ni kuunga mjadala wa Matinga mkono, kwa sababu katika Kenya kama kuna watu wameumia ni watu wa Embu County, majimbo ya Embu, kwa sababu hapo mwanzo mambawa ya maji imetoka Embu, Kiambere damu, Masinga damu, Kitaru damu na Kindaruma damu. Yangu ni kusema kama hiyo mambo itaendelea vizuri, ni watu wa Embu waangaliwe vizuri, kwa sababu upande wa chini mbele hakuna stima, kwa sababu kunasemekana kuna KenGen wa kugenerate na wale wengine wa kuuza. Kwa hivyo naunga mkono serikali ya Kenya Kwanza, kama hiyo mambo itaenda vizuri, jimbo la Embu iwe ya kwanza kuangaliwa, ndio tuweze kuwa tukilipa usuru, tukipata stima kila pahali pote, kwa sababu hata chakula na mambo ya elimu pia, hata hiyo mambo ya umeme, hizo ndamu singekuwa zinasaidia sisi ndio tuweze kuendelea vizuri. Hata maji ya kilimo wao wakitupatia, ingawa tunajua ni private company, lakini kuna mambo mengine huko wanavaa wao wakituangalilia. Kwa hiyo mto ya kutoka Masinga, Kitaru, Kamburu kwenda huko chini. Asante sana Bwana Speaker.
Thank you very much, Senator. When honorable members, I want us to move to the next order, and that is pursuant to standing order number 5-7. Yes, next statement, sorry, not order, sorry, yes. I want to call upon the Senate Majority Leader to issue a statement on the business of the Senate for the week commencing Tuesday, November 8th, 2022. Next order, please.
Mr. Speaker, sir, pursuant to Standing Order 57-1, I hereby present to the Senate the business of the Senate for the week commencing Tuesday, 8th November 2022. Mr. Speaker, signs with the Senate calendar approved on 12th October 2022, the Senate is scheduled to proceed for a short recess between 28th October and 7th November 2022. Regular sittings of the Senate will therefore resume on Tuesday, 8th November 2022. On that day, the Senate Business Committee will meet to reschedule the business of the Senate. This is projected to contain business that will not be concluded from today's order paper and any other business scheduled by the committee. The order paper for Wednesday, 9th November 2022 and for Thursday, 10th November 2022 will contain business that will not be concluded on Tuesday, 8th November 2022 and on Wednesday, 9th November 2022, respectively, as well as petitions, and statements, and any other business scheduled by the Senate Business Committee. Mr. Speaker, sir, during the recess period, several activities have been lined up. These include induction of the Senate Business Committee, which is scheduled for 30th October to 1st November 2022. And thereafter, the second induction for all honorable senators will be held from 2nd November to 4th November 2022. These events are critical to the working of the Senate, as they will provide an opportunity for the members of the Senate Business Committee to better understand the mandate of the committee, while the second induction of senators will largely focus on the various tools and mechanisms available to senators in order to actively discharge their constitutional mandate. A session of the Senate Standing Orders will also be conducted so that senators can better understand and appreciate transaction of business in the Senate. I cannot overstate the importance of the enforcement, aforementioned. I cannot overstate the importance of the aforementioned retreat and urge all senators to purpose to attend induction events, select committees, or will follow thereafter, in accordance with their respective work plans. Mr. Speaker, sir, in conclusion, I encourage senators and committee chairpersons who wish to sponsor bills or wish to have legislative proposals drafted to liaise with the office of the clerk at the earliest opportunity to have the bills fast-tracked. I thank you and hereby lay the statement on the table of the House. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, the Majority Leader, for your statement. I'm seeing interventions. Senator Kajwang. Moses.
Mr. Speaker, the statement of the Majority Leader usually does not elicit debate because it's more of agenda setting for the coming period. But, Mr. Speaker, I'd like the leadership of the House, when they retreat, to look urgently into the issue of the additional allocations bill that is supposed to take money to counties. Mr. Speaker, it is unfortunate that money that is coming from the World Bank, the NIDA, and several other donors is still stuck at the Treasury and is not going to the counties. The additional allocations bill was supposed to unlock what we used to call conditional grants. And Mr. Speaker, many counties had built in their budgets and in their project proposals that money was coming in. Part of that money was going into agriculture, part of it was going into the health sector, part of that money was going into sanitation, part of that money was going into infrastructure, the Kenya Urban Support Program. Part of that money was going into capacity building, the Devolution Support Program. So, Speaker, some of these grants are expiring. Some of them are expiring this year, and that money has not gone to counties. What we need is the chair to direct the Committee on Finance and the SBC also to give directions to the Committee on Finance to make this their topmost priority. And Mr. Speaker, we can borrow a leaf from the National Assembly, where Speaker Wetangula has ruled that there are certain bills that do not have to go through pre-publication scrutiny, so that they can be fast-tracked and brought to the House. Mr. Speaker, how I wish, when the Majority Leader was telling us about the business of the Senate in the coming days, that there would be a comment that this House would definitely consider at first reading the additional allocations bill. This is an emergency. This is extremely important. The World Bank, the NIDA, and all these other donors cannot understand us. They have given money, they have brought money to be taken to our counties, and yet this Senate and Parliament as a whole is moving at the pace of a snail. Mr. Speaker, our governors cannot understand us. This money is supposed to be with them, and yet this Parliament, Senate, and National Assembly cannot agree on small things. Mr. Speaker, the people in counties cannot understand us. This matter has been pending for far too long, and Mr. Speaker, I wish you could direct either the Chair of Finance or the leadership of this House to make this the topmost priority of this House, and even if we have to come back during that period of recess, let it be, so that this money can go to counties, this money can save lives, and this money can unlock productivity in our counties. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Senator Kajwang. Point of order, your point of order, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, listening to Senator Kajwang, I find him grossly out of order. Whereas the issues that he is articulating indeed are urgent and relevant, but he cannot use the platform of imputing improper motive, suggesting inefficiency on the part of the leader of the majority, Mr. Speaker, when he knows what he's supposed to do. And Mr. Speaker, it could be that he doesn't know. The senator should be well guided by the chair that the issues he's raising, Mr. Speaker, he should not raise from a point of order. He's free to raise a statement in which he'll ask for all those answers. And if he wants us to come as the majority side, he should now be informed, Mr. Speaker, that those things concern the counties represented by members of the minority just as they concern us. However, we have to operate within the standing orders, Mr. Speaker. And I'll be glad to inform you that this morning we now put our government in place, and obviously from all departments of government you'll be getting the answers that you require. Please hold your horses. Otherwise you'll be ruled and adjudged out of order.
Senator Minority Leader, you have a point of order as well?
Yes. Bwana Spika, asante sana kwa kunipa nafasi hii. Bwana Spika, kitu cha kwanza ni kwamba taratibu za bunge ni kwamba ikiwa alikuwa anataka kumweleza Seneta Kajwang kuhusikana na taarifa fulani, angekuwa amekwambia sio hoja ya nidhamu. Angekuwa anataka kusema taarifa kumweleza ili yeye apate kujua na aseme nimekubali, muache ndugu yangu aweze kunieleza. Lakini hakuuliza swali la kwamba anataka kumweleza Kajwang. Kwa hiyo yeye ndio ako totally out of order. Yeye amejitoa kabisa. Cha pili, Bwana Spika, ni kwamba Seneta Kajwang amesema kitu cha muhimu sana, ya kwamba dada yetu asisahau ikiwa watu wanaenda kwa likizo kama hii, ingekuwa muhimu kusisitiza jambo kama lile, ya kwamba serikali ithibitike, ijihusishe sana, kwamba serikali zetu za mashinani zinahitaji hizo senti. Tuko hapa sote kama maseneta kwa sababu ya serikali za mashinani. Tuwapelekee waweze kutengeneza hizo serikali zao. Tukikosa kuwapelekea ama kukosa kuweka taratibu za muhimu hapa, wale hawawezi kupata pesa. Kwa hiyo yeye hakukosea, alikuwa anawakumbusha wale walio ndani ya serikali waweze kujua kupitia kwa kiongozi walio wengi. Asante Bwana Spika.
Thank you, Senator Madzayo. Kajwang, you want to say something, Senator Kajwang?
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, I want to encourage the majority whip not to be jittery. I was not imputing any inefficiency on the part of the majority side. In fact, this has nothing to do with the cabinet that was sworn in today. Mr. Speaker, in June 2022, the additional allocations bill was brought to Parliament. We were not able to agree with the National Assembly on things that I think are small matters. Mr. Speaker, this matter is entirely in our hands, and my appeal was for fast tracking. What I was trying to do was to raise that sense of urgency, because perhaps our colleagues who have joined the Senate just this August might not be privy to the joking and all the lobbying that went into getting the additional allocations bill. Mr. Speaker, this bill, just definitions alone, took us such a long time to move from conditional grants to additional allocations. Mr. Speaker, I just want to encourage the whip and the majority leader and the minority leader. They sit in the Senate Business Committee. They have the power and they have the mandate to organize the business of the House and whatever comes to this House. And Mr. Speaker, it is not out of order for you as a Speaker or for SBC to tell the Finance Committee that this is a matter of urgency and we shall have failed in our role as a Senate. If this money, the financial year comes to a close, if this money has not gone to counties, and if some of these programs expire before the money goes to counties, and Mr. Speaker, just as I finalize on that correction to the majority whip, 3 very important bills that this Senate processes: the division of revenue, the allocation of revenue, and now the additional allocations bill. We have processed the 2 successfully, but the 3rd one, we have no excuse to the counties and to the nation and to the donors if we do not fast track the additional allocations bill.
Thank you very much, Senator Kajwang. I have restrained myself from intervening because yours truly sits as a member of Senate Business Committee, and we have taken note. And I'm very sure the majority side are up to the task in terms of their role as the majority in the House. Thank you very much. Honorable members, I would like to rearrange the order of business of this House, and I want us to move to order number 11. Kindly call out order number 11 in the order paper for the day.
Order number 11, adjournment of the Senate.
I call upon the leader of the majority to move the motion on adjournment of the House.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I rise to move the following motion: that pursuant to Standing Order 13, the Senate do adjourn until Tuesday, 8 November 2022. Mr. Speaker, opportunity for Senate to recharge full batteries and receive further training from our Secretariat and stakeholders. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move.
The seconder to the motion.
Senator, Minority Leader, can second. Or Justice Madhayo.
Senator Madhayo. Thank you.
Asante Bwana Spika. Bwana Spika, cha kwanza nataka kuunga mkono taratibu za dadangu Keroche, Senator Keroche, kwa kuona ya kwamba imefika wakati maseneta ingekuwa vyema wakienda likizo kidogo kuanzia tarehe 4 mpaka tarehe 8 ya mwezi wa 11. Bwana Spika, na imani ya kwamba agizo la kwenda likizo kama hilo litasaidia pakubwa kwa wale maseneta ambao wameingia bunge kwa hivi sasa, kwa sababu tumeona mara nyingi tukiwa hapa ndani zile tabia zao za kutembea hapa ndani na pengine kuvuka upande huu bila kwenda pale mbele kwenye mstari.
Senator Madhayo, allow me kindly second the motion, then we will thereafter
I'm seconding the motion.
Thank you.
Nafanya hivyo, naunga mkono naeleza ni kwa sababu gani tunahitajika ikiwa tunaenda likizo. Taratibu kama hizi ziweze kufundishwa. Tumeona mifano ambayo imetengenezwa, imefanywa hapa na maseneta, na hata ndugu yangu Khalwale najua anaweza kukubali kabisa ya kwamba ni ukweli. Hata yeye mwenyewe pia amekuwa akisimama akisema kwamba tabia kama hii hapana mzuri. Enda pale uweke kichwa chako chini, alafu usimame, uinuke, alafu uende pande nyingine unataka, ama uingie ndani wakati speaker akiwa yuko pale ama chairman akiwa yuko pale. Ona speaker, hiyo taratibu peke yake. Kuna taratibu nyingi, hata wakati wewe ukiwa umeketi hapo, mtu akiwa ataka kuongea pale, ni muhimu pia hawa ndugu zetu waweze kujua. Sisi tulipitia hiyo kuanzia 2013. Najua mtaalam wa taratibu ama standing orders zetu za bunge, hakuna mtu anaweza kumshinda Boni Khalwale. Najua yeye ni mtaalam na ni mkongwe, na mimi napendelea sana bila anaweza kutandika hizo sheria. Na ingekuwa vyema pia ikiwa baada ya kwamba tutarudi, tutakuwa tumejifundisha mengi ambayo tunataka kwenda kujua. Kwa hiyo mimi naunga mkono, ni jambo zuri tukienda likizo kwa hizo siku kama 4-5, ili kwenda kujifundisha mambo taratibu za hapa zaidi, ili tukirudi tutakuwa tumenoa kabisa ile misumeno ya kufanya kazi ndani ya bunge la Senate. Asante sana, naunga mkono.
Honorable Senators, I now propose the question that pursuant to Standing Orders number 31(3), the Senate do adjourn until Tuesday, 8th of November, 2022. I'll call upon those who want to contribute to this debate to do so. Honorable Okech Eddie. Well, Honorable Mandago Jackson Kiplagat, this technology I know is still playing with us.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wish to contribute to this debate and say training is very important because learning is a continuous process. Honorable Speaker, particularly for those of us who are first-time senators in the House, as the leader of minority has stated, Mr. Speaker, there is necessity to continue learning the rules of this House, Mr. Speaker, and gaining knowledge so that we can represent our counties effectively, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I support the adjournment for the Senate to go into the retreat for training so that senators can become more efficient. And that is also an opportunity, Mr. Speaker, realizing that this Senate is now more homogeneous, Mr. Speaker. We have people with different experiences, and this will add value to devolution, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I therefore support the adjournment of this and the training that senators are going to get, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Mandago. Senator Khalwale Boni, Kakamega.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this motion. And Mr. Speaker, it's important that in support of this motion, probably we make it clearer, not only to the House, but to the public that sent us here. Mr. Speaker, unlike what some people might think on the face of it, we are not going on recess. We are going to work outside the chambers. We will be retreating to some corner in the country, and I hope, members, that the communication has been made. If it hasn't, I sit on the House Business Committee. It's important that you organize yourself in terms of travel arrangements so that you join us, the leadership of the House. We shall precede you on Sunday, work on Sunday night, Monday morning, and join the rest of you when you come to the venue on 2nd, and we shall work the whole week until Saturday is when we shall be through with business and come back. To allow you a bit of time to go back to the county, do a bit of consultation, before we come back on the 8th for reopening. So it is actually a working recess in accordance with the program of this Senate. During that recess, we hope to rearrange the calendar so that over and above what the leader of the minority has said, that we will walk through members through the way Parliament works, we'll also use that opportunity to rearrange our calendar so that we are more effective. In fact, I'm glad that we have had an element of an altercation with the chairman of Public Accounts, Senator Moses Kajwang, on that very important issue of unconditional grants. I was in the Provincial General Hospital, former Provincial General Hospital, Kakamega, and the first thing they told me is that because of the stoppage of that particular fund, there was straining. So I look forward to this meeting for us to align all those things, to unlock so that monies that are available and are due can be released to the county governments. With those remarks, Mr. Speaker, sir, I support.
Thank you, Senator from Kakamega, Senator Okech Edi Gishero.
Thank you again, Honorable Speaker. I actually rise to support this motion. I think that it's a critical one, given that this first part of the first session of the House has also been a very nice one. So I think that just as my dear friend, Honorable Senator, Majority Whip, the bullfighter himself, Senator Boni Alwale, has said, it is very critical that we build capacity of this House. And this is one of the things that I think that the adjournment of this House calls attention of the House to. And as the Majority Whip has said, we are going to a work session as we go to Mombasa. I think that this is very critical because this House has also seen establishment of some new committees, such as the one I'm sitting in, the County Public Investment Committee, that I think is a new committee in the House that has got a lot of critical oversight roles that we are going to see in the county, and there is need to familiarize with some of these committees and procedures of some of these committees, and more importantly, even to be able to dissect the nexus between such committees and other existing committees in the House. I know that this committee is a committee that used to work very closely with the committee that the Homa Bay Senator, Moses Kajwang, chairs now, and sometimes we don't want conflict in this kind of roles. I also do recognize, Mr. Speaker, that we had the Supreme Court ruling, which impact this House very squarely in terms of our oversight and accountability roles, to the extent that some of the terms that were used in that particular ruling will be critical for the members of the House to understand in terms of making our roles very efficient. You remember, Mr. Speaker, terms that the Supreme Court used, including things like having a secondary oversight role in terms of oversight. These are issues that I think next week we'll see featuring more prominently when we go for this particular retreat. And lastly, Mr. Speaker, I think it's very critical to appreciate the fact that this House has demonstrated between the two houses of Parliament that it is a house of reason. It's the most bipartisan House. When I was coming to this House as a first-time senator, and when I saw the energy that my brother, the bullfighter, Boni Alwale, did put in the campaigns, I was wondering about the temperatures of this House, Mr. Speaker. And I think that the session that we have had, the first part of this session that we have had, has really shown that there's maturity in this house, and I think it's a function of this kind of retreats. I think this retreat is akin to the retreat that we had in Naivasha, Mr. Speaker, whereby we saw members of the two sides, from the majority side and the minority side, working hand in hand to promote a collaborative platform whereby you can continuously be more bipartisan on issues, oversight and accountability. So one of the things I'm really looking forward to when we go to Mombasa next week is how we can cultivate that culture of bipartisan nature of this house. I know today when we started the session, temperatures were a little bit high when the statement that was made by my brother, Honorable Senator of Laikipia, Kinyua, supported very squarely with my brother again, the bullfighter. Looked like the temperatures were very high between them and my brother Olekina, Senator Olekina. And I hope that this retreat will make it possible to continuously explore the concept of constructive criticism and constructive agenda raising in this house. So therefore, Mr. Speaker, I do support this motion, and as has been said by Senator Tabitha Karanja, that this adjournment or this motion is not just about going to a recess, but going to work. And I hope that as we go to Mombasa, we will dedicate ourselves to work, but also let's have fun as we work because we need it. Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, the Honorable Eddie. Honorable Majority Whip had actually told this House that we are retreating to a certain corner of the country. You have confirmed that that corner is Mombasa, for that matter. Information further.
I rise to support the motion by the Deputy Majority Leader. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, it is also proper for me to say thank you and to say how proud I am of all the members, Mr. Speaker, in this session, how they have contributed, Mr. Speaker. I have been pretty regular here, and I have seen those who have bothered to look up their facts, done their research, and come here to present. Mr. Speaker, I love to sit and listen to some of the people who have done their research. I like to mention in particular the previous speaker here, Eddie. Eddie Okech is a young gentleman, but I'm very proud of the senator for the kind of contributions he makes in this house. Mr. Speaker, we have seen statements in this house in this last brief session. We have also seen motion, notices being given, and also at least one motion that was affirmed by a resolution of this House. But Mr. Speaker, I wanted to join my colleague Senator for Homa Bay, Senator Kajwang, that so far we have not been able to process a bill through the three stages. In fact, Mr. Speaker, I have been regular here, and I cannot recall a day when even we did a first reading, and I stand to be corrected, for any bill. So, Mr. Speaker, my prayer is that as we retreat this time round, we will definitely correct some of the mistakes with the minor mistakes, like some of the colleagues crossing over and so on, some of them changing language mid-air, some of them even quoting vernacular. Mr. Speaker, we will change that. But critically, Mr. Speaker, I hope the message goes to the House Business Committee that they will take the opportunity. They said they will precede us on Sunday and have meetings on Sunday and Monday. Now, what we need to do is to process bills. And those bills that lapsed in the last session of the House, they have been taken by very hardworking senators who have volunteered to finish the work that was started by our worthy colleagues who are not sitting in this House anymore. Mr. Speaker, I pray that the message will go and we shall prioritize those important bills. We need to process these bills. We need to come here, debate, make resolutions. And in fact, those that were almost going through and they were on the other side at our sister house frustrated, Mr. Speaker, let us finish those bills. Because at the end of it, Mr. Speaker, it is the bills that will really count as the output in this house. So it is my prayer, Mr. Speaker, that this will be prioritized in this retreat. And we shall also have another opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to socialize with some of the senators. Mr. Speaker, we note that some of us are maybe very busy, I don't know, doing what outside. We don't see some of them. So this will be an opportunity for us to also see them, maybe encourage them to attend the chamber more, and we will be able to get to know each other better. And more importantly, Mr. Speaker, we shall agree on a course of action. And I like my whip is here, my deputy, my majority leader is here, Mr. Speaker, that we will agree on a course of action as a Senate, that we are going to process more bills. They are going to prioritize those bills and motions so that we get this thing done. Mr. Speaker, another thing that cropped up as I sit down in this session as we break for recess was a question of a statement. The Honorable Sifuna, Senator for Nairobi, has brought it, and I have supported him on a number of times, that in one way or the other, we need to manage our time so that we can go to motions. Yes, the chair has been very magnanimous with all of us, and we appreciate. But we need to relook at that area, because now we will be restricted in terms of outputs if the motions are not being processed, and the bills which normally come after motions will never be reached if we extend the time too much. So that is an issue that maybe we need to look at. But apart from that, Mr. Speaker, I am very happy, very proud to have been associated in this first session, and I know we are going to achieve more, and God bless this country. God bless this Senate, which has produced very good cabinet secretaries, and God bless us all. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Senator Mungatana Danson. Senator Kajwang Moses Otieno.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this motion of adjournment. That the House resumes its sittings on 8th of November 2022 and take that break to plan. As we have said before, things don't go wrong, things start wrong. And it would be important that the Senate retreats to consider what it would put forth as priority business, because what we define as priority business in the first session will dictate how this Senate is going to run. Mr. Speaker, it's quite unfortunate that at the end of the term of Parliament, and particularly Senate, you might find that the bills that this House has processed are the constitutional bills. That every year we'll process the division of revenue and the allocation of revenue, and you will find it very rare that the President assents to a bill that has originated from the Senate. In the last Senate, I believe it's only the T bill that was sponsored by Senator Cheriot, and the assumption of Office of Governor bill that was sponsored by Senator Matangi, and I think an amendment to the County Governments Act that was sent to by the President. Most of the bills that were originated by senators got stuck. Some fell into purgatory because of disagreement between the National Assembly and the Senate, and some of them were time-barred. And of course, there was the issue of concurrence, issues of Article 110, that brought back a lot of bills to the Senate. I want to urge that during this short break, and as we retreat to strategize, we prioritize those bills that were brought before the House in the last Senate. We shorten the publication period. We exempt some of them from pre-publication scrutiny. If already the Senate had rendered its decision, of course, every bill must come back through first reading and go through the stages. But we can shorten the processes and the stages for the bills to come to this House quickly. And Mr. Speaker, I had already talked of the additional allocations bill, which I think ideally should have come for first reading, even before we go for this short break. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, the President, when he addressed Parliament, expressed goodwill as far as the Senate Monitoring and Evaluation Fund is concerned. But sitting here as a senator, I don't seem to see any motion on the part of the leadership of the House to actualize that good intention. Mr. Speaker, I've been part of this struggle for the longest time that I've been in the Senate. When I joined the Senate, Senator Kiraitu Murungi then came up with a proposal. I think it was a proposed amendment to the PSC Act that would then set up a committee, a subcommittee of the Parliamentary Service Commission that would look into matters of the Senate. That bill never went far, even though it was passed by the Senate. Thereafter, we went into this exercise of developing regulations for a monitoring and evaluation fund. Mr. Speaker, we went to the United States of America using taxpayers' money. We visited several states. We met a number of state legislatures. We saw how the US Senate and state senates carry out oversight. And Mr. Speaker, we came up with a model which was benchmarked, or which was based on that best practice from the United States of America. We came, crafted regulations. When they went to the National Assembly, our good friend Senator Cheptumo, then being the chair of the Delegated Legislation Committee, killed those regulations. Mr. Speaker, the regulations were so clear. We had even put an amount that was supposed to be the seed capital for that fund. That fund was supposed to be facilitated with 1 billion shillings. The function of the fund was very clearly stated. We were not using that money to go and build roads and to do development projects. We were going to do social impact assessment. We were going to engage experts who would be able to do evaluation of projects in counties. We were going to use those resources to carry out public participation and to establish whether the needs of wananchi out of the counties are being actualized by the projects of county governments. And that money, the senator was not even going to handle it. There are those who thought that senators were looking for money for campaigns. And some of the most ardent opponents of that fund were members of the National Assembly who thought that senators were going to use that money to either kick them out of their constituencies or to become governors. And Mr. Speaker, some of those who are loud against the Senate Monitoring Fund have unfortunately lost their positions, and most of the senators have come back here. I want to encourage the House leadership that the regulations had proposed that we set up a special committee. This special committee would be the one that receives reports from the 47 counties. Because once, as a senator, you have engaged the services of an expert, once, as a senator, you have come up with a report on the viability or on the social impact of the projects out in the counties, where does that report go to? Do you send it to the county assembly, or do you bring it to the Senate? When you bring it to the Senate, does it come as a motion, or does it come as a statement? And so we thought that we would establish a committee, a select committee, on monitoring and evaluation that would consider all those reports coming from the various counties and would then make actionable recommendations. In a case where you've gone to your county and you found that the county government was supposed to set up a I pray that in this short break, and even as we retreat in Mombasa, there will be an element or some time given to see how we can actualize this monitoring fund. The biggest problem has been lack of goodwill from the presidency, and the president was on record when he came to Parliament. Let us not allow that window of goodwill to close before we move in and actualize this fund. You see, members of the National Assembly, when they go on recess, they will be busy issuing checks, bursary checks. They'll be busy handing over buses. They'll be busy handing over classrooms. What does a senator go to the village to do? Senator Boni Khalwale went to visit the hospital in his county, and he probably could not offer anything tangible except making promises that is going to articulate their plight on the floor of the Senate. We have been very clear that we as senators, we don't want money for doing projects because it's a poison chalice. But we want money to be able to oversee and to be able to ensure that the 370 billion that we send to counties is being put to proper and effective use. And so, Mr. Speaker, I pray that when we come back on 8th of November, this matter will have been discussed, and it will be possible for us to propose a select committee that will advance this agenda, taking into account and taking advantage of the goodwill of the presidency. I also pray that we shall bring back the implementation committee of the Senate. This committee was there in the first Senate, and then it disappeared in the last Senate. And the argument was that every committee should follow up its recommendations, should follow up the implementation of its recommendations. Mr. Speaker, that has not worked. As a result, you've got recommendations on motions that have been brought to this House, adopted by the House, and nobody follows them up. You've got recommendations of various committees, and some recommendations are cross-cutting, that one committee cannot follow them up to the end. And that is why we had a dedicated implementation committee. I'd love us to debate on this when we take our break, and I'd like us to look at the merits and demerits of the implementation committee. After 10 years, Mr. Speaker, Kenyans are asking, why is there still theft in counties? Why are projects stalling in counties? Why do we have pending bills in counties? Nairobi Metropolitan Service has shut down with pending bills in terms of billions, and yet every year this House has been sending money to Nairobi City County. It is because we make lofty statements on the floor of this House, we make hard-hitting recommendations, but no one follows them up. Again, to the leadership, the challenge goes to you, but we as members must also be part of that debate to ensure that we bring back that implementation committee. And of course, the implementation committee, tradition has it, it is led by the coalition that is not in government, because it's not easy if you are in government to also be the one oversighting and be the one pushing.
Honorable Senator Kajwang, it went off without warning, but I think you've made your point.
That's a motion for Mr. Speaker.
Go ahead for another 1 minute, 2 minutes max.
Mr. Speaker, I want to urge that when we